Please turn your microphones on and pull them forward when you speak. I'd like to call the September 12, 2022 meeting of the Town of Niskayuna Planning Board and Zoning Commission to order. Mr. Henry, would you call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme.
Here.
Mr. Screbutenis.
Here.
Mr. Khan.
Here.
Mr. McPartland.
Here.
Mr. Darpino.
Here.
Ms. Shenfield.
Here.
Ms. Gold.
Present. Whoops.
Ms. Strang. Chairman Walsh.
Here. Okay, we have the approval of the minutes from the August 29th, 2022 meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to move for approval by Mr. Screbutenis. Do I have a second? And seconded by Mr. Khan. Corrections, changes to the minutes from August 29th?
I have one.
Okay, Mr. Dion.
Line 8. Everyone's listed with their first and last name. Mr. Khan is the only one listed as Mr. Khan. Add Jengus to his first name.
Hey, nice. Okay, is there anybody else has anything? I got a couple minor comments. All right. As soon as I find them. So page 4, which line 147, it talks about the trees to be reviewed, and it says 25 inch. I just want to point out, 25 inch, I'm assuming that was 25 inch diameter. So if we could add the words diameter to that. And then on page 6, lines starting at line 223, and that's regarding the new Volcano restaurant. It says, I think it says Ms. Ping. It's actually Ms. Lin is the applicant, L-I-N. Ping is her first name. So there's several places in that paragraph. You could just change that to Ms. Lin versus Ms. Ping. Okay. That's all I had. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yes. I went through the page.
Can't hear you. Could you pull it forward? Just pull it forward.
Okay. Sorry about that. I forgot to bring the page and line number, but there was a part where there was a concern about the Hillcrest project that first responders wouldn't be able to find it. That's not my concern. My concern is strictly visitors and delivery folks. I know our police force and our fire district absolutely know those apartments backwards and forwards.
It's working well.
Thank you.
So that was not my concern. It was truly the visitors and delivery people, those who aren't familiar with the area.
So that is lines 55 and 56. Or well,
It doesn't state that though, does it? It doesn't state police in there anywhere in the minutes.
so it says she was concerned with changing the directional signs from east and west to a numeral format and felt the signs were confusing and could cause traffic issues with their readability.
That's all it says, right? It doesn't say anything
That
about
was
police.
the
That
one.
was a different one.
There was something else about,
No, we had no further discussion later on that at all. That's it. At least there's nothing else in the minutes.
We'll double check it.
okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, there's,
That's
it
fine.
might have been casual discussion, but it wasn't captured in the minutes. That's the only thing in the minutes is during the resolution. All right, so I'm going to make a motion that we modify the minutes as we just spoke with those minor corrections and the correction that Mr. DiArpino had. Can I have a second on that?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Mr. Screbutenis. Any other changes? Okay, all those favor of the minutes approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none opposed, the meeting minutes are approved. Next up is public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move privilege of the floor. This privilege of the floor, anyone wishing to be heard regarding any planning and zoning matters can come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and we gladly listen to what you have to say. So privilege of the floor is open. And I know we may have some people virtually, but we'll start with anybody here in the public that would like to speak. So privilege of the floor is open. Yeah, it's all matters. Yep.
So my name is Carl White. I'm a resident actually adjacent to Niskayuna in Colony. and some residents from Niskayuna were kind enough to come and explain one of the planning partition. It's actually a concern regarding the Empire Drive application for a 2-lot minor subdivision. It was listed, and it will be one of the discussion items this evening.
Yep. Could you do me a favor, pull that microphone down? I don't know if it doesn't seem loud. Just pull it. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Would you mind repeating your address as well?
Yep, it is 5 Ives Court, Schenectady, New York. So it is just on the Colony side of Niskayuna. So what I had prepared is just a simple description of the fact that we were recently notified about the application to subdivide a tax map parcel 6.1133-2 into 2 separate lots of 1.83 and 2 acres. The proposed plan indicates that after the subdivision, 2 homes, 1 on each lot, can be constructed, not necessarily will. The application was submitted on behalf of the current owner of the parcel, Mr. Robert Jorlemon. I've written a small memo, but I'll try to summarize the key points, and you can tell me where and what I do with this. Purpose of the memo to me was to highlight and document the concerns of myself and several others from that community and Colony about the subdivision property and the potential future construction of the 2 homes. There are 3 main points that I'd like to bring up, and they may have already been somewhat addressed, so I'm just trying to voice again from our perspective. This is the first time we've talked about this. So the first is subterranean water flow, and the risks that we see are sinkholes, rising water table, and damage potentially caused to the currently developed property in the Colony. And the area behind the proposed 2-lot subdivision in Niskayuna and Colony has a high water table and an aquifer. The construction of the 2 homes and the clearing of the property include many trees that could have a significant impact on the pathway of the subterranean water. Alterations in the flow may endanger the adjacent developed property, such as the homes and pools at 5 and 8 Ives Court and Riesling Road. The second point is the removal of the natural or potential removal of natural trees and shrubs. The risk that presents to us is a reduction in the amount of water drawn from the ground and a raising of the water table. The development of the 2-lot parcel calls for clearing of much of the natural trees and shrubs in the area. Such removal will likely reduce the amount of water drawn out of the ground and promote elevation of the water table. This may exacerbate the potential risks identified elsewhere in this memo. And the last point is the stability of the mature trees. There are several, the risk is the collapse of the large mature trees on developed property in Colony. The background there are several very large trees, well over 100 feet in height, on the current property or on the property line between Niskayuna and Colony. Most of the trees have grown with a bias or leaning towards Colony because they favor sunlight, so they're already at some point of risk to us. And as such, these trees currently are a concern. The development of the property within the proposed 2-lot subdivision poses some threat to the root structure in these large mature trees by raising the water table, damaging their root structure, removing the smaller surrounding trees and shrubs that help stabilize the ground there. So, these are, there's several other, factors. People would say the view and property value, but I understand that's not really what I'm getting at here. At least my primary concern with my wife is safety and the fact that, there is an engineering assessment suitable to make all parties comfortable that in fact this project, if it moves forward, truly is safe for all parties. So, it would be my request if I had a magic wand, and maybe this is already underway, and maybe people are already thinking this way because I very rarely attend meetings such as this, but I would request if it may not be the planning board, but it seems like to give us confidence that this is a safe project and that all things considered, all parties can be satisfied it's safe, and maybe this is underway, so forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, that a full civil engineering assessment would be performed to make sure that the concerns I've raised are in fact safe and that residents on both sides of the property line are satisfied. And some of the readings of the minutes that have been prepared for tonight say that some of these matters have been brought up before. So I apologize if I'm regurgitating some of this, but I guess what I'm still looking for is how are we as a group going to be satisfied that, if the construction moves forward, the concerns I've raised are addressed. I think there is a bit of discussion in tonight's minutes about moving towards a tree committee, some form to look at trees to make sure that whatever gets removed or whatever stays is safe. And then I think the second thing that was discussed is some water, potentially putting a swale in of some form. I don't understand what that would do to the colony side. I'd like to better understand that if that's going to be done. And there was some testimony from a representative from CT Mail that seemed to indicate that, and I don't understand that a stormwater system isn't necessary because the lots are so large. So if that's true, that's fine. But again, as a citizen of a nearby, as a resident there, the concerns I raised are imperative that we get some full understanding of, I guess, before we would be satisfied that our homes remain safe. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you email that memo to the town planner, or do you have a copy?
I do have a copy and I can leave it with you,
Yeah,
Kevin.
you can give it to Laura, and then she'll make sure that it's part of the record, and all the board members and the applicant will
Sure.
get a copy, okay?
Thank you.
And as you know, it's on the agenda for discussion later tonight, so the applicant is either online or maybe the representative here, and so hopefully we can address, again, some of the comments that we hear during privilege of the floor. Privilege of the floor is open, please.
Okay. So, my name is Ethan, and I live at 65 Empire Drive. I live at 65 Empire Drive, just next to the proposed land change. So, first I want to thank the board to give us the opportunity to express our opinions. I actually missed the first hearing because it realized it's a short notice, and I want to thank my neighborhood that sharing the information. Okay. So I want to share the same concern about the rain, the potential rain flood issues. Actually, I checked the maps, the elevation map. As you can see, the proposed land actually is higher than our backyard. So potentially all the rainwater will flow towards our direction. So this is especially a concern if you change the surface and modify the slopes. Okay, so I don't want to say too much, but this is a real concern for us, and I hope that you can have a real plan to address this issue. In fact, when our home was built, and I heard from the builder that the town requested to have a trench at the board, but later on that plan was discussed. So I don't know the reason, but again, that is the drain and water is a concern for that area. So hope the town can consider that. Another point I want to say is, okay, the proposed land actually is the trees and we shouldn't call it a forest, but tree and bush is the linkage between Large Kill and Birchwood. Okay, so every winter I saw deers passing by from this area, and so building homes in this area will completely cut off this potential migration. The path. Okay, so I think this is definitely will endanger the wildlife and animals. So that's my two concerns, and of course I share other concerns from my neighbors, like the traffic and potential construction noise, because this is the matured neighborhood, and so this need to be addressed, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Can I leave this?
Sure, if you'd like to. Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Hi.
I was here 2 weeks ago, so I don't want to beat a dead horse with the water, but some of us on Empire met with a DEC agent, and he suggested.
Did you start with your name and address
Oh,
just
sorry.
because it's out for the
Yeah,
record?
sure.
Thank
Scott
you.
Stryker, 69 Empire Drive. Again, he suggested that the board consider a SWIP, Storm Pollution Prevention Plan, and an MS4 review. Despite the acreage, it doesn't require it, but because of all the concerns that have already been stated here, that be a possibility. And the other thing is some of the land is protected. So where the new proposed subdivision is, would that be redefined and reviewed as far as what the limitations are? Like what's protected? Would it go into that at all on either side of it? So just that kind of general concern.
I'm not sure your question about protecting the land after it's subdivided.
Would it be reviewed, the protected land, stuff that's already protected?
Sure. I
Would
mean,
that would be
yeah.
reviewed in, so as far as making sure nothing would be going into that and what have you and that type of stuff? I'm
Yep.
sure it would, but again. What's that?
Yep, thank you. Come on up.
Good evening. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to express our concern. My name is Sun Zhang, and I'm the owner of house 57 Empire Drive. I think we just would like to emphasize that the water issue could be a serious problem for this neighborhood. And as you know, the whole property was developed from maybe orchard, and a big part of it was used to be a wetland. I mean, according to many neighbors who built the house here. We already have water issues on many houses. So water table was very high, and the sump pump constantly pumping water. Without being guided to. The water was pumped out from the house in just to the outside at this point, and it constantly working. So already, so never stop is a kind of like. So according to what other people concerned, we were worried that maybe the problem will be further. Will be worsened. So I didn't bring my paper today. I just, that's
got it.
one of the major concerns.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you.
You can email it to us later too, for the record, if you forgot it.
Okay. Thank you.
Privilege of the floor? Yep, there you go.
Good evening. My name is Judy Segoyan at 30 Riesling Road, Schenectady. That's in the Colony area. And I live behind the subdivisions that are being proposed. And I just came out here tonight just to say the same things that you have heard this evening about the water and about the wildlife. I don't really have anything to add, but I wanted everybody to know that I was here to represent that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Steve Conley. I'm 8 Ives Court in the town of Colony. I just want to echo that as well. My property is adjacent to Mr. White's, and all of his comments, I think, are valid, not only to me, but the other residences on Riesling. The Empire side, I don't know as well. Particularly the water. The prior gentleman talked about some pumps and the constant running. That is the situation very much at my place, and it's a concern. So I appreciate you hearing us.
Thank you. Anybody else here like to speak? Anybody else here in town hall would like to speak before we go to anybody virtual? Okay, Laura, you have anybody online that want to speak?
So I have a request from, well, Janice Comley. Is Janice Comley online? Her request came in very late. I did send her the login, but it was very late. But she did note in her request to join online that she was concerned regarding the water issues that will arise from the changes to this land. The woods are an attractive barrier, but that does not even come close to the flooding that will occur. So I think that was the concern she wanted to state at the meeting. And then also, is Claudia Thornton online? And Claudia, if you're joining by phone, sometimes the system mutes you, so you would press *6, I think, to unmute yourself on the phone if the system muted you.
Hi, this is Claudia Thornton.
Hello.
I live on Riesling Road, more down towards Ives Court. And again, the sump pump issue is a big deal because I don't know if the water is going to be running downhill or how it's going to be contained. So again, most of the people on Riesling are concerned about the water issue. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's all I had.
How about any emails or letters received?
No emails, except I did get that request from Janice, and I don't think potentially it just went out too late.
Okay. All right, so I'll just ask one more time, give anybody else want to have an opportunity to speak before I close privilege of the floor? Here's your chance. Any planning and zoning matters? No? Okay, anybody else online? Okay, hearing or seeing no one, then we'll close privilege of the floor. Thank you. We'll be picking up this subject later on during discussion. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we move right to new business. Under new business, we have 3 resolutions tonight. First resolution being Resolution 2022-22, a resolution for site plan approval for new signage at the Five Below Department Store at 424 Balltown Road in Mohawk Commons. And I'm going to recuse myself from this topic, and Mr. Diarpino will chair the meeting, and Ms. Strang will sit in my place for voting purposes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have a revised sign package that we received for this meeting, which in essence has done the following. There will be one large facade sign that is on the building that will be code compliant. There are 3 other temporary signs. Thank you. 3 other temporary signs that will be on the placard out by the road, along with corner signs that will be put on temporarily. And there is a 45-day limit that they were asking for as part of the variance. And also, the waiver is requesting for 15 additional days per sign, and also 13 square feet, 48 square feet, and 48 square feet for the temporary signage. The blade sign that was reviewed in the last meeting, the applicant has offered to remove that from the application. Is the applicant online?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, we removed the blade sign. I provided comparison on the banner sizes. Provided those new rendering comparison on the building to Clark this afternoon, along with a notation of your concern to not block the pylon with the movable freestanding temporary sign that's going to be out by the freestanding pylon sign.
Okay. So I will read the resolution as it here. Now, therefore, here it be resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission has determined that the proposed waiver for signs as described above would have a minimum negative effect on aesthetics, and be it further resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission does hereby grant said waiver to allow for the signage as described in the drawing labeled sheet 7 on page of the 8-page drawing set entitled Five Below, job number 12166 424 Balltown Road, Schenectady, New York, 12304 by SEMA Network, Inc., dated revision to 8/31/22. And be it further resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds that the site plan referenced above meets the requirements of the zoning code and hereby approves the site plan amendment. May I get a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Scrubby Tennis. Second?
I second.
Mr. Laflamme? Okay. Any discussion?
I just had one comment, which isn't necessarily related to the signage, but I did refer these plans to the police department, and they did let me know that there's been an uptick in theft in the commons as a whole. And so they were wondering if, when the planning board's reviewing tenant changes, if we can request that the tenant put, cameras and things that can help, because it's becoming a draw on our staff. So I don't know. I know, Darren, you don't work for
Unfortunately,
Five Below necessarily, but if there's a way to pass on that, we would like to see cameras that point towards the parking lot to help us assist, in that plaza. And that's something that we can bring up during tenant changes, just that we get a lot of calls down there, and it'd be very helpful if we could have some additional cameras to assist in enforcement.
That back to the proper people at Five Below.
Thank you. Any other items?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that it's good that the blade sign's removed, and actually the current main sign, permanent main sign, is actually smaller than the one that was there for Party City that was granted by a waiver by the ZBA. So I think it's moving in the right direction, size of sign line. And I think temporary signs, a waiver for those are appropriate.
Okay, Mr. Henry, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme?
Aye.
Mr. Scrubby Tennis?
Aye.
Mr. Khan?
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin?
Aye.
Ms. Shenfield?
Aye.
Ms. Strang?
Aye.
Mr. Darpino?
Aye. All right, motion is carried.
Okay. Thank you, and we'll move on. Next.
Have a good.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. That was Mr. Katz, I believe. Okay. All right, thank you. Next up is Resolution 2022-23, a resolution for site plan approval for a tenant change to Volcano Asian Barbecue and Hot Pot Restaurant, 2309 Knott Street. That's at ShopRite Plaza, numbers 307 and 308. That's the former Thai Bistro and Smash Burger. Okay, so the resolution reads, resolve, the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan meets the requirements of the zoning code and previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves this site plan and tenant change with the following conditions. 1, any future proposed new signage will be reviewed by the Planning Board and Zoning Commission. And 2, the applicant shall coordinate with the engineering department on any grease interceptors that are required in support of the tenant change. Do I have a motion on this resolution?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Khan for adoption. Do I have a second?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Mr. Scributennis. And any discussion? We have the applicant present. Is it Ms. Lynn? Yep. You can come up, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if there's anything you want to add. Anything you have to say? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just received the sign design today, and I sent to the Henry
Yep.
earlier.
Yeah, well, you can send that on and we'll take that up at the next meeting since we hadn't have an opportunity to take a look at it. The new, the new, yeah, for any additional signs above and beyond what was in the package, we'll have to address that at the next meeting. Okay?
Okay.
All right, but make sure you get it into the planning office and if, if the sign is compliant, it might only require a buildings permit, even though it says that, we will review it. But once you submit it and let the town planning office take a look at it and then make that determination, okay?
Okay.
Okay, good.
All
All right.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding this project?
Welcome to town.
Yeah, it's good use of some empty space, and it give another option for dining for the community. So no other comments? Mr. Henry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme?
Aye.
Mr. Scrubby Tennis?
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. Darpino,
Aye.
Ms. Shenfield,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. Motion carries. The resolution is approved, and welcome to the community. We look forward to having you. Thank you. All right, and final resolution for tonight is Resolution 2022-24, a resolution for site plan approval for a tenant change to Momentive Performance Materials at 2750 Balltown Road. That's the previous SI Group building on Balltown. Resolved that the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan meets the requirements of the zoning code and previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves this site plan and tenant change with the following conditions. 1, the proposed permanent new signage associated with this tenant change shall be reviewed and approved by the Planning Board and Zoning Commission. Can I have a motion on this tenant change resolution?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Scributinus for approval. Have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Khan. Any further discussion? Again, this is Momentive taking over the SI Group building on Balltown Road. And we have Mr. McQueenie representing Momentive here in the audience. Any comments or questions? Again, it's a great thing since they're downsizing, moving out, so it's instant reuse of that property, and we're excited about that. So,
We did mention last time, I just want to, again, enter in the record, right? At some point, we're going to need to assess how traffic changes on Balltown Road with the new reuse of the land.
Yeah, I think because there's no change in number of people or building on this one, but when they are redoing their buildings and things, we can visit that.
okay, any other comments? Okay, Mr. Henry, please call the roll.
Mr. LaFlamme,
Aye.
Mr. Scributinus,
Aye.
Mr. Khan,
Aye.
Mr. McPartlin,
Aye.
Mr. Darpino,
Aye.
Ms. Shenfield,
Aye.
Chairman Walsh.
Aye. Resolution's approved. Welcome to Momentive to the neighborhood. Look forward to seeing you grow over there. Yeah, thank you. All right, that's it for new business tonight. So we'll move into our discussion items. First discussion item being 1502 Balltown Road. And that's a site plan application to remodel the existing storage shop right here at the corner of Knott Street East in Balltown. Do we have a representative on the line tonight? Or do we have someone here?
Hey, good evening. Tyler Fronte from Stewart's. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So I'm here tonight to discuss our proposal for our current location at 1502 Balltown Road. We are proposing stone veneer at the base of the building, hardy board siding. We're trying to dress up the appearance of the convenience store. With the addition, or excuse me, with the remodel, we will also be adding a freezer addition to the north side elevation, which will allow us to continue to grow and offer food to go items as our industry is constantly changing. We're adapting, so the need for additional cooler and freezer space is needed. So that's why we are here tonight.
Okay. Did you want anything specific that you want to mention, or you want to open, you ready for some questions?
Yeah, I'm ready for some questions from the board.
All right, Mr. Khan, you're going to start out? Just make sure you're speaking to the microphone, please.
So the main thing is the external view of the freezer. It looks like it's going to look like a freezer, right? It's not going to look like an external face of the building.
That's correct. It's paneled, so you can't puncture that freezer, else it's lose its integrity. So what we've looked into options previously, and we're unable to, accommodate, putting stone and having it match exactly.
What is the finish? Is it stainless steel external?
Yeah, it's like a pro panel.
Yeah. So I mean, the north face of that building is a very visible face. That, right? It is. I consider it is, and others can weigh in. It is part of the aesthetic of the building. So I mean, have you looked at other options of potentially
Yeah, we certainly have. We've looked at putting it on the back and on the other side. Unfortunately, we're kind of restricted based on our current interior layout. We'd have to redo the entire store, and that wouldn't be feasible. Additionally, this is code compliant, the location. If it was to go into the rear, I believe we would need a variance from the ZBA. So we tried to come up with a code compliant plan that improved what's existing today, the facade.
So, I mean, thoughts from the board in terms of what can be,
Sure.
architecturally, what can be done here?
Okay, so this cooler, because I've dealt with a few of these before, they'll be homogeneous in color. They have a roof that goes over them that's a flat, probably heavy duty rubber roof that goes on it too. All the trims and everything can be made in the same color. One of the things that would be visible would be the condensate lines that come out. Sometimes those are only just bare copper covered in insulation. Other times you can get a jacket on them, but there are other, we'll call them utilities, that are applied to the outside of these coolers if they're not fully integrated inside the shell. So I guess one of the benefits is that you can get these all as a single color, maybe as close to the siding as possible. Harding siding has 40 some odd colors, 50 colors. And that does abut, I guess, next to what your dumpster pen is. So maybe there's a way to look at the reconfiguration of the gates that are there or the fencing that might be able to maybe mask this a little bit more. But, without the cooler being actually built with another shell around it, that's what you're going to see.
And just to add on to that, the panel will match the facade of the hardy board out front, the cobblestone.
Where is the condenser for the cooler?
On the opposite side that you can't see, behind the building.
Behind the building. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's good.
That's good. Yeah, it's good that it's there. And it will not jut out from, I guess it's on that, is that shown on the south elevation? A little bit of it? Maybe.
It's on the west
Well, that's
elevation.
the cooler side, but it's on the back side of that west elevation view, right?
It's on the back of it would be on the north side.
Yeah.
You'd see the majority of it, and then it loops around in the rear on the south, yes.
All right, the key thing is that this is within code.
Yeah, I checked with the building inspector. The setback is normally 10 feet, and so he's double checking if the 9 feet can be compliant or if it has to be moved to the 10 feet. Is there any reason that you can't make it 10 feet?
The biggest thing for us is keeping it all flush, so we don't want to jet it out too far where there's a break. So that could be somewhat problematic.
Okay. So we're then just double checking on the 9 feet. If we can
Okay.
do it, then yes. Otherwise, it might need a area variance.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. How about any other changes? The propane staying where it's at?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. Could you
The
repeat
propane
that, please?
cylinders for sale in front of the store will stay where they're at?
That's correct.
And what are you going to do with the air machine?
The air machine we are relocating.
Okay.
So it's shifting down.
It's moving to right along parking spot number 5, right along Knott Street East.
Okay.
How about striping for the exit, the egress to Knott Street East? Is that going to be restriped?
If it's needed, we will certainly look into it and address it. But if it's not needed, we will not.
Yeah, can't recall, but I think that's a tough spot to pull out on. So I think it's pretty worn over there. So you might want to take a look at that striping. Okay.
Certainly will.
The only other comment I had, the dumpster enclosure and the shed. I assume you're keeping what you have now, or is it's just vinyl screening?
Yep, it's gonna be vinyl screening around it. Correct.
Yeah, I have no other comments. I mean, to take a look at whether or not an area variance is required based on the size, because it's an expansion of the building, if it's part of the building, is that why?
Yeah, so normally you can't, it's half of the distance or you can't go any closer than the existing building. But Tom wasn't 100% sure that that rule actually applies to the CN zoning district, so we have to double check that.
So again, if that all checks out, then we could actually just,
Have a resolution at the next meeting. Yeah, pending the review from the building inspector.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at that striping over there, because if it's not noted on the drawing, we can add it as a condition to the resolution also.
I would add it as a condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the changes look good. I mean,
yeah, the paving plan.
yeah, can't help.
All good.
Yep, cleaning it up, moving that air to a different location is a big help because you can't get to where it's at anyway, so.
Right, yeah.
So it's a bigger help over on the other side of the building, and nothing else is really changing, so. Any questions or comments from the board? Is everybody okay with this? After, of course, after the planning department checks on to make sure there's no restrictions.
Yep. Recap again, what specific merchandising you're going to offer by having that freezer?
It's going to be an expansion, so we constantly, since it's a smaller store, we can't offer all our ice cream, some of our dairy frozen products. So it'll just be more variety in the shop. We usually try to do more seasonal items, so we'll be able to hold some additional product lines. So I don't have a specific list because we do rotate it. And, you know, this shop specifically and all our shops, it's kind of gravitated based on, you know, what the customer and the consumers want. So we kind of rotate it based on consumer preferences.
So will there be a reconfiguration of the current layout inside the existing store because of this?
Slight addition inside, just kind of a reorienting, a couple minor items, just mainly coffee and hot chocolate. So no real noticeable to the public.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Just a question for the planning office. Did we calculate the maximum allowable square foot lot coverage for this parcel?
We could double check that. It's, we'll double check that too. So we'll do the setbacks and the maximum coverage. I mean, it's going over an existing impervious area, but there's two ways to calculate it. So we'll make sure that we do both of them, right? Because one of them square footage of the store and one of them is like total coverage.
Is there a special use permit that allows this in this district, or is this a completely permitted use?
This is, you know, I'll have to double check where the boundary line is for the PDD that's related to ShopRite, but I believe that it's not in that. And
I
so-
believe that's correct, Laura. I checked, at least it showed up on Sims as being outside of that.
the outside of the PDD, but still in the CN neighborhood commercial.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's a special. It would have been at the time. It's been a while now, but a special use permit.
So the limit would be imposed on the expansion of that use with that special permitted use, right?
We looked at that when we had the last special use permit. I'm trying to think of what it was. And it's, you know, there's a certain percentage that goes there, but I don't know. And like Elena and I can chat about this. If it's not square footage of the store, it's almost like an accessory structure that's attached to the building.
Yeah. And I think that's what the key issue, right? I mean, I remember when this became the Stewart shop and it used to be a garage, right?
It was a
Yeah, it was a gas station, yeah.
yeah, gas station.
Well, I mean,
Yep.
it's a gas station, but it was a
Yeah.
It was a fixed.
Yeah, it was a.
Yeah.
it was a
mechanics
garage. yeah.
garage.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that long ago.
Nope.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? Does this add to the square footage of the building or is it an accessory? It's that-
Yeah. So I mean, we'll just make sure that we have all that buttoned up for you guys.
Yeah.
All right, did I hear we're going to have a tentative resolution, though? So the planning department will take a look at those open items, lot coverage, area variance for the setback, and whether or not the special permitted use is impacted, needs to be updated as a result of the addition of the freezer. And if not, you can move forward with the resolution. You can notify the applicant and get something out to the board.
Mhm.
And if there's a problem, and then obviously we'll hear about it. because our next meeting isn't until October 3rd.
Correct.
So, so we'll call for a resolution, assuming that those items are taken care of and there's no impacts on the site plan with any of those items. Okay?
Thank you.
Sound
Thank
good?
you.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And thanks, Laura. All right. Next, we have Hillside Avenue, the site plan application for new signage at Hillcrest Village. We had a resolution in our last meeting, which did not pass for the signage. There's been some modifications to the sign. Mr. Crawford, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Could you go ahead and update the board on changes since our last meeting?
Sure. After our last meeting, you'll find in the revised design file, sign 2, the applicant revised the copy on the sign. So they simplified the message. Instead of listing all the buildings individually, it's just a much simpler presentation. And we thought that that addressed some concerns we heard from the board. The sign size still is 12 square feet versus the 4. And we really didn't get into this last time, but we presented a rendering showing the 12 square foot sign versus the 4 square foot sign from 220 feet. And quite frankly, you can't see the 4 square foot sign. And it's nobody's fault, but it's just at this particular location, from the distance where you need to see the sign, the 4 square feet is not adequate. So we've remained at 12 square feet for sign number 2. But we've amended the copy because we heard feedback that it was too complicated. And then to sign number 5, I believe it is, for the leasing center. We really didn't get into this last time, but we again asked the board's consideration to allow the 7.8 square foot sign when the old sign was 5.25. When we looked at this site before we even came before the board, the applicant analyzed it and said, well, we have a freestanding sign. We don't need the wall sign. So they already took the wall sign off the wall. And there's a net reduction in sign area at the leasing center. We're asking the board to take that into consideration. Although we're at 7.8 square feet, we removed an over 10 square foot sign that was on the wall. The other thing that came up since the last meeting was perhaps sign 5 wasn't framed correctly, perhaps. I'll just give you my 2 cents. The code covers directional signs, clearly, 4 square feet, 8 foot height. But it doesn't cover identification signs at leasing centers. And these signs at the leasing center are not directional signs. We're suggesting that they're not covered by the code. And if you look just below that provision in the code, the planning board has the discretion to handle whatever it needs to handle in regard to signs that's not covered in the code. So we're asking the board to consider the signs that have been removed, the modest increase in the sign area now versus the old sign, and that the signs at the leasing center are not directional signs and we're not bound by the 4 square feet. So that's it in brief.
Yeah, and the leasing center sign is internal on the site also.
Yes, it's on not a heavily traveled roadway.
Right.
It's just there to mark the location. It's natural to have an identification there. The applicant realized it didn't need 2, so the wall sign came off. But the 7.8 square foot sign versus the 5.2 sign, it's de minimis really, the increase.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crawford. Well, I mean, I think everybody knows where I stand. I voted to approve the past sign package. Slight modification here to simplify the signs. So, I support this as I have in the past. So I guess I'll open it to the board to see who's concerned. Let's open to this board first. Anybody here? Any comments? Or Daisy, anything remotely? No? Okay.
No, I'm just looking at it now and taking in what Mr. Crawford is presenting now.
Okay. Ms. Gold?
Okay, a couple things. I appreciate that the new owners are keeping the Hillcrest name because I remember that it was rather traumatic for the tenants when it switched from
Time out or something.
Hillcrest Village West was originally Randy Gardens and East was Sue Ellen Gardens. And it really was a pain in the neck for the tenants to change their address on anything and everything that they needed to. But the new sign, the new proposed sign,
In here.
and mathematical expression, even though the set sign isn't there, nonetheless, it implies that all the buildings numbered between 10 and 80 are in this complex. So I don't think it serves the purpose of
Oh, is it a true statement, all buildings 10 through 80 are in that section of the complex where it's pointed?
But the problem is that buildings 15, 25, et cetera, are not. They're in the other side.
Uh,
So I think it's going to cause a lot of confusion. And my goal was to reduce confusion.
She just
Okay.
Do you have a good, do you want me to, do you want to wrap up?
Mr. Crawford, did you get that comment?
No.
The comment was that it says buildings 10 through 80 on the new sign. And I don't know, specifically what buildings are in there. So I was assuming 10, it says 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 on the old sign. But apparently building 15 is across the street. So it truly isn't 10 through 80. That's in that location.
So we have buildings missing. I'm not the building number expert on this one. I'm the designer. So you could move Hillcrest Village down on the sign, make more room for the listings, and go back to individually listing the building numbers, and even put a west in there if west is important, and still work with the sign shape that we have. And I would be happy to give you something maybe in 5 days that could be reviewed internally, perhaps. Whatever the town feels is important or necessary to be on the sign, the applicant's open to.
Yeah. I didn't, personally, I didn't go look to see each building number in the development, in the complex to see if they agreed with the sign. I was under the assumption that, it did. So that's a good point Ms. Gold brings up. That it says 10 through 80 and number 15 isn't really there.
Well, neither is 25, 35,
I'm
et
saying.
cetera.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more confusing rather than less.
Yeah.
So I can go back to the old design, but rearrange the copy and make the numbers larger so they're clearer. So they don't say 15 or 25 or 35.
I was hoping you would go for a more elegant solution, like either retaining the east and west or going with something like the 10s and the 5s, the 10s being what's currently west, but something that would convey more clearly what exists. Because, originally they were two separate developments. And the east and west came in when they were merged under one name.
Well, the applicant is willing to add in the west also. Between when I created the design and our meeting, we had this discussion. So perhaps that can be worked in as well.
All right, let me ask the board this. Is the board okay with the size of the signs?
Yes, I am. And I think the only other observation I have is that on sign number 2, for just consistency's sake, you list Hillcrest Village apartment homes at the tops of all the other signs, yet this directional sign has it listed at the bottom. I didn't know if it would be more helpful to keep them all consistent. Like sign number 5 has it Hillcrest Village at the top, Leasing Center below.
It's funny. That's like an internal design discussion we've had. When it's a directional sign, the directional information is up top. But when it's an identification sign, the name of the place is up top and then leasing centers at the bottom. It doesn't matter to me. It's really what the profile of the design that the clients come up with for all the locations that it has.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but if it's directional, it's up top. But if it's identification, it's down the bottom.
And I'm okay with the size of these signs.
Okay.
When we're
So I'm okay with the size of the signs. I'm okay with sign number 5, the leasing center ID. All right. I think it's a good point Ms. Gold brings up, just to make sure that the directional signs actually point to the buildings that are actually there. So there's no confusion. Whatever you suggest to do that, again, I'm okay with the size of sign number 2 also. So if you could just submit something that actually points out the buildings that are really there, truly there, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But I'll leave it to the rest of the board if they're okay, because I'd like to, when we get through this, I'd like to make sure that we, have enough people that we have a resolution, at least gets a majority of the vote.
And I'm also okay with the size, but definitely more uniformity with making sure that the buildings are properly identified. I mean, that is the biggest thing. And along what Mr. Darpino had stated, I mean, I agree aesthetically, just having a consistency of either Hillcrest Village at the top on all of them or the bottom at all of them.
Well, again, I'm okay either way because, they're design experts, so personally, it's just my 2 cents. All right, so you're going to update the sign number 2 to be more explicit on what apartments are actually, it's directing you to, Mr. Crawford, is that correct?
Yes, you'll have, the planning department will have something by Friday.
All right. Our next meeting is not till the 3rd of October, so if you get that in, we can take a look at it. I guess I'd like to call for a tentative resolution because it's such a long time. I mean, you have the signs are up right now. They may have to change, but you have signs in place right now. So I guess urgency, I'm not sure what the urgency would be then, right?
I'm just trying to get it done while it's top of mind,
Well, let's just be clear, right? What we're recommending, Mr. Crawford, is actually to go back to the original sign that's there right now. Right? It's going to be 12 square feet and it's going to have the buildings listed out. And he's already indicated that they have a internal directional versus locational difference as to why they put the Hillcrest at the bottom or the top.
Again, I didn't have a problem with that. Yes, thank you, Mr. Cotton.
So we're back at the way it looked last week.
Yep.
Well, if it's true that you have a 15 Hillcrest Village on the other side of the road, that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
right?
but the buildings in the other complex are all end in 5.
Yep. So I've understood that since the last time knowing the property that, so I agree that they do need to list out the names. It's just a question of code compliance versus not, right? And if the board feels that our code warrants the waiver to make it clear what these buildings are, then it's the board's decision.
Yep.
To me, something simpler to read because that road gets very busy and I'm still worried about visitors holding up traffic and causing accidents and whatnot, trying to decipher whether the building they're looking for is here or there. So I think something simpler like keeping east and west or going to the 5s and the 10s, whatever. If I've been out voting, I might not even be voting on this, so.
Are we clear on direction for the applicant? You okay, Mr. Crawford?
We're going to revise sign 2. Was there a request for sign 5 also?
Well, there's to consider, putting the Hillcrest Village at the bottom of the sign. And I know that's the way that the applicant wants it. I don't have a problem with it since it's an informational sign versus a directional sign. I don't have a problem with it personally.
So, I think because the size is the main issue, we could call for a tentative resolution, including the waivers, and then potentially Mr. Crawford could design a couple different ways of identifying the buildings that are in the 10s. I don't know that if you put 10s on one side of the road, that's going to make a lot of sense to people either, though. It seems like a super difficult issue for identification. But maybe he could try a couple different iterations, and then because the size is truly, I think, what we're taking action on, not necessarily what's written on it. So then we can.
And also, these signs have been already placed, right?
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that the planning board has to approve them in that manner. Yep. Like if for some reason adding the word west really makes a big difference to directionally, getting people to the right place. I mean, certainly the applicant, I think, will not be their favorite thing, but make a new sign and have it say what it needs to say.
However, if the signs have been placed, have there been any directional issues? It's probably not come to you, but that's the issue, we don't know. So I go back to what you said before, which is, it really is about the size.
Right. And I'll state again, I'm okay with the size. Is there anybody who disagrees with the size? Please let us know now. No, okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, Mr. Crawford, take a look at the way it's laid out and submit to the town planner.
Yep,
And
I
we-
know this isn't going to change the vote, Chairman Walsh, but I do want to go on record saying that I would like to see code compliant signs, but I'm just one vote. I think the rest of the board is in another place, so, we'll just see how we vote when we get the
Yeah.
resolution.
I agree with Mr. Crawford. It's a lot of information to squeeze on a sign for this specific circumstance. Okay? All right, Mr. Crawford. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
take care. Thank you.
We'll get there.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Bear with me here. I lost where I'm at. Oh, there we go. Okay, next is Empire Drive, application for two-lot minor subdivision tax map parcel 61.133-2 into two separate lots. And, okay, we have the representative of the applicant and the applicant here. So why don't you guys kick it off? And you heard some comments again regarding privilege of the floor. Anything you can do to address those comments, we'd appreciate it. I mean, I can reiterate what they were, but I think you guys are sitting here, so you know, but primary concern being drainage, water, and the impacts of water on any of the vegetation, et cetera.
All right. Again, I'm Owen Spolstra with CT Mail. Since the August 29th meeting, we submitted a new drawing. We added some of the items that were wanted or talked about at the last meeting regarding the wetlands buffer. We added grading to the plan. We reduced the clearing shown on the plan. We also widened the bike path easement to 12 feet. Added a chart to the bottom that showed, the different impacts of our site comparatively to the lots adjacent. And, going to the grading plan or, the stormwater was the main item that we were talking about. And again, we heard it tonight. And if Laura can go to the next sheet, I prepared, just a schematic of how the water drains today. It's hard to see the topo in this one on the screen, but so from the east, there's that small section that goes to the gully that's in the Stryker Press property. And that's the area that we're not going to touch. So, we're not proposing to do any development or tree cutting in that area of lot 2. There's a small area that does drain to the west and kind of ends up going towards the stub road and the De Jesus property. But the majority of the site kind of drains directly west and towards Mr. Geralman's other property and the Helderberg property. There's a wetland in that area that it drains to. I heard about 19 lots being affected by this property, but when you look at the drainage patterns, the only lots that are impacted by the stormwater runoff, and specifically the stormwater from where the proposed houses are potentially the two lots that are by the stub road. And that's why we proposed on the plan, on the grading plan, we proposed a swale that would direct that water from the house and the driveway areas towards the west and towards those wetlands at the rear or at the rear of lot one, what I'm calling the rear, behind the house. The majority of the Colony site is either higher or on, the lots on the Colony side of the property are either higher than our property and drain to us, or about the same elevation, and our site does not drain to them. So I don't see the impacts of stormwater. And we're also proposing the drainage swale to mitigate that impact to the sites that could potentially be impacted by it.
Could you describe the swale, what you mean for the public and for this board?
Yeah. So if
How
you
big,
look-
how deep, how do you do it, et cetera?
Yeah, so basically there's a swale that would catch any water coming off the driveways or the houses and direct it to the west. And we delineate it with a dotted line that Laura's highlighting right now. So that water, instead of flowing towards the two houses off the stub road, it would go towards the rear of lot one, towards that wetland. And, so it would keep the water from draining onto the neighboring properties, and it would go to that low spot on the property.
With the exception of snow melt from the snow clearing areas that may stream across the stub road.
Yeah. They do that now, though.
Well, but there may also be some water streaming off these driveways. Don't really have an idea of the proposed grading of the driveway. Will the first floor grade be above the stub road?
The plan is, yeah, the first floors would be above the stub road.
I was grading back to this.
Does,
Divert that water.
well, let's, guys,
Nick, yeah, I'm sorry.
did you guys consider the possibility of adding a catchment basin to the west side of the end of the stub road?
Basin there, connected to that basin.
Or are we talking about some kind of a culvert underneath the proposed driveways?
The proposal was to have the driveways have a low point in them, so that would flow overland over the driveways.
Propose to keep the water on our property,
Yeah.
Right.
not to go to the two sublots or to go on Empire Drive.
And the drainage analysis that you've performed for the existing conditions is definitely helpful. But that still does kind of leave the question of, finished grade after these proposed residences are developed.
Yeah.
Well, the finished proposed grade would be submitted with the building of the homes. The swale is put in effect so that you know that the water is not going to be dumped
Yes,
on
sir.
Empire, those two lots.
Yeah. The change between the proposed drainage and what I showed on that schematic that Laura had up a minute ago would be that those areas that do drain towards the De Jesus and Lee property would not drain that way anymore. They would drain to the back, or to the back of lot one.
Were you going to document, how the site's going to function post-construction as part of this submittal? In other words, a written summary of what the expectations are? Was that your plan?
I could do that, yeah.
I mean, I think, I've heard from the public, and I think we usually have things reviewed when there's a concern. And obviously, drainage being a concern, I'm not sure what the town's plan was, whether to have the in-house engineering staff to review this or the TDE. So we'll go outside to a town designated engineer. And so that's why we need the information written and the drawings provided to show how the drainage will flow. And then we'll have a town designated engineer review the assumptions and engineering to validate.
Okay.
Okay.
So will this be a full SWIP or it will be just a drainage?
It wouldn't be a full SWIP, but it is a drainage analysis, and because we have some documentation of drainage concerns in the area, I think we can hire a TDE and have them double check everything.
Okay, so I do want to ask, I mean, I know it's a total of 1.3 acre disturbance between the two lots, right? Do we have a legal right to ask for a full SWIP?
So it's the area of disturbance is 0.65, so it's in between 0.5 and 1 acre, which is a soil
Well,
erosion
it's
and sediment.
0.65 on each, right?
It looks like a total.
It's 0.65 on each, is that true?
0.65 on each.
Oh, well, then it does need a, because if you're disturbing more than an acre, then it does.
On a
need
residential property, a residential subdivision or development, anything under 5 acres and less than 25% impervious does not require any post-construction stormwater.
So I just want to verify this with our practice.
Okay, yeah, I'll double check that.
Yeah.
But then it still probably falls under the soil erosion and sediment control plan though, which is essentially what you've got on your subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah, we still do a basic SWIP even
Now,
for.
when you're talking, I talked about a drainage, what I almost see as a memo kind of thing. We're discussing the drainage.
Yeah.
We're not looking for, a big hydraulic study of anything. You just ask.
Well, I mean, you'll submit what you feel is correct, and then we'll just have the town designated engineer validate that.
Okay.
I mean, and if the town designated engineer, professional engineer states that it's lacking something or it's not sufficient, and then we'd come back to you and say, hey, here's the comments we received. You're familiar with that, I'm sure, you've been on probably both sides of the fence on that one, right? So,
Yes.
so write it up, you got your drawings, and we'll have somebody else take a look at it to validate. We heard from the public that there are water concerns in the area, and that's our primary concern too. And we know that things can be engineered correctly. We'll see it all the time. So we don't doubt the ability to be able to handle post-construction to be any worse and hopefully better than it is now, right? But we'll have that validated, and that would make the residents in the neighborhood feel comfortable, and I'm sure make this board feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I whatever we can legally ask for here, to be clear about drainage issues prior to construction, during construction, and after, I think this is what we should be asking.
Yeah, I think in general, you own the land, the stub road was put there with the foresight that someday that this land might be developed. I know that's, it's a fact. I mean, if you take a look at CT Mail, pulled up the old subdivisions from, I'm sure, what was it, Mr. Polson or Mr. Marini? Can't remember the name of it.
Yes, Ronan Paulson.
Sir Owen Polson. And we had the foresight back then to make sure there was a stub road, because we've learned over the years that to include the stub road, to make sure that there's an identifier there so people will know. We tried to do our best that people would know what the future holds, and that was done here.
Yeah.
And you have right to develop your land, which just makes sure that the post-construction doesn't impact anybody. That's what the neighborhood wants also. And we agree. As far as the lots go, I mean, they're great size lots. Like you said, the coverage is exceeds what the requirements are of the R1 residential zoning districts by a long shot. I think the layout looks pretty good. We could have the TDE, take a look at the snow storage as part of that, and so you can include that in your write-up, where the snow storage is, in case there's any potential problems there. And, I think we just submit that, and we'll send it out, and we'll get some feedback and go forward. I mean, that's all we can do. Am I missing something? Anybody have any comments on the board?
So there's a couple catch basins at the top of the stub road.
Yes.
There's, I guess it would be an easement that is on both sides, correct, Laura? It comes back down towards the property line,
For
right here.
stormwater?
Utilities.
No, for stormwater.
It's right away.
Correct.
It's town land.
Would it make sense to maybe build off what Mr. McPartland said, is to, instead of adding a swale at the bottom of a driveway where the snow removal is going to be, and to create a dip there, which will eventually be icy for part of the year, if you had the ability to put in a catch basin and connect it, maybe on the west side of the stub road, if if it's in the right of way, that may be a better long-term solution for water mitigation than trying to swale everything across 2 driveways at the edge of the stub road. You're going to be connecting to the sanitary anyways at the end of the stub road. And if you look at the inverts, you've got a pretty good clearance. You're in at 308 and sanitary is in at 303. So when you're doing your evaluation, you've got some built-in utilities that are in very close proximity that are in the easement areas.
All right, well, I'll discuss it with Mr. Drolleman.
Okay.
All right.
I also wanted to ask if the applicant could consider reducing the limits of clearing between the 2 proposed residences. Right now, the plan does show we're clearing one area that's approximately 1.25 acres. And I understand to a certain degree, if these are being developed at the same time, it would be convenient from a construction timeline perspective to have a nice open cleared area, but just wanted to gauge your openness to preserving some of the natural buffer between these 2 eventual neighbors.
Oh, between the 2 lots?
That's right.
Okay. Leaving some trees in here.
You know, we're already being isolated and thrown out of the neighborhood by keeping a tree buffer between everybody else. Now you want to subdivide the other people and
Well,
keep
if
them
you
apart from each other?
if you consider if you look at it from the other perspective, someone who's interested in a keyhole lot may really like their privacy, and so it may become more desirable if they see that their own residence is sort of tucked away.
These weren't really proposed to be keyhole lots. These were proposed to be lots in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and they're not in the
Now we're being
definition.
Isolated from the neighborhood, and you're
That-
asking me to
that being-
isolate 2 more
That
lots.
being said, these 2 new occupants of the neighborhood will have a lot of neighboring parcels right up against their property line. So you got me there. Maybe it's not a keyhole lot, but when you have, let's see, count them, almost 10 neighbors on your own property line,
Love
it's
neighbors.
in effect, you're sort of keyholed in there. Nothing against that. I think it's attractive to a certain buyer.
I think we'll let the buyer decide. Would that be an
Well,
idea
the
that
goal,
would work?
one of the goals here is to preserve the buffer and preserve as much of the existing vegetation. Limit the area, the clearing area.
Which is my question. Why are you asking me to provide a buffer when people may like to be next door to other people?
Because there's a concern of removing a large number of trees.
Yeah, it's pretty normal for the planning board to reduce the limits of clearing to the absolute max, like minimum that you can to build the
So did
home.
the tree council weigh in yet or no?
Yeah, the tree council hasn't been out on site yet, but they will give you guys some good guidance on that too.
Just to understand though, if I understood your point correctly, let the new homeowners decide, right?
I mean, there will be 2 new homeowners.
Right, and let them decide is what you had suggested?
I'm suggesting that rather than now you've already divided 2 homeowners from the rest of the neighborhood. You've isolated them by asking for the buffers along both sides. Now you're asking me to provide a buffer between the 2 neighbors
But
and
if,
commit myself to that.
yeah, but,
And
but did you not?
That's, how neighborly is that?
Well, I think it's, well, first of all, it's very in kind with Niskuna. There's a lot of growth and there's a lot of trees and a lot of the houses in Niskuna. This is a signature characteristic of Niskuna. But also, I think, I just want to understand what you said. If you're thinking, let the new homeowners make the decision, that weighs on the side of what Mr. McPartland's suggesting is let the buffers remain. And if they want to cut them down, they can. You know, it would be after they own it. But I favor that thinking because it is very signature of Niskuna to have mature growth.
Is it possible for me to
Development,
speak? This
They
is
clear cut the whole thing. All the apple orchards are gone and all the deer are gone. Now they want me to preserve trees and they want me to preserve deer. And nobody.
Order, please address the board and for the public, please. It's not appropriate.
Yeah, no,
I feel I'm being
taken advantage of. I'm sorry, so.
Actually,
I'll try to calm down. I'll try
no,
not
that's
to
fair.
say
I mean,
that.
you have a lot of pressures that we don't get to see as a board when you're just dealing with putting a project together, but it's pretty consistent. You know, this town has a lot of water drainage issues in general. Trees help mitigate that. Removing more trees in this specific town can make it a little harder for the developer to retain the water or do the swales and do all those things. So it would almost benefit you that the net impact would be more likely zero by keeping them. Right? I mean, that's what we've seen. When people do clear, the planning board gets to hear back from the neighbors that it really did have it had a positive or had an impact on the neighbors, right?
I'll tell you what, I could stop right now and anybody who wants to buy the property can buy it.
Right.
And leave it treated.
Right. That's always been the option.
Everybody
right?
has that opportunity, but now they want me not to cut trees because they don't want to lose their backyard.
It's not a question of
Well,
day, sir. It's
were
what
clearing the
Mr.
lots when it was my backyard.
What Mr. Flam is saying, this is something very consistent with what this board does.
Yeah.
With every development, especially the ones that that are perfectly legal, perfectly sized correctly, but they move into areas with known water issues. This is what, the 10th one we've seen in the decade that I've been here?
Yeah, it's very similar to ones that we were just reviewing on, like along Row and Angelina. And we had very similar comments in that case. And even though they were residential, they did do a basic SWIP.
Right, and our goal is to make sure that for the new tenants, for the new homeowners, for the existing homeowners, for the town, that we do the best possible thing where the water issues are concerned.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
This is Mrs. Geralman. Is it possible for me to speak for a moment?
Yes, you're the applicant, correct?
Yep, thank you. I guess I think what Bob and I are trying to understand is that the people that have the biggest concerns have clear-cut properties, but they're trying to maintain the illusion of woods on their own property, which is actually our property. So I guess it seems sort of odd that Marini was able to clear cut all of those lots on that side that abut our property. But we are in a position to have to maintain trees. We also, it appears to me from what I understand, both listening and speaking with Owen, et cetera, is that most of the water issues that are happening, the water is draining onto our property. So I'm really confused by some of this. It seems like it's a not in my backyard kind of philosophy going on here. And I get that people don't want things to change and they like the woods. We like them too. We may be one of those people that's moving on to that property. So we have a vested interest in this being lovely and delightful for everybody. And we'd like the neighbors to welcome us as well. But we're sort of feeling at this point like there's non sequiturs happening, that there's things that are not required by the town, that we're all of a sudden having to make people happy about. And I just don't understand it, considering that those same rules don't seem to have been applied to them very recently in the last 5 or 6 years when their properties were developed. Can you help me with that?
I can, this is Mr. LaFlamme. I don't know if you have the visual that we have. And I was making the comment about what your husband had made, which was let the homeowners decide. And I was really playing off of that, meaning the best way to do that is to let the growth be there, right, as much as you can. And then the new owners can make the decision on what they could do. The other option is you can clear cut it. But from this board's experience and residents, me being one on Route Road, it only makes it harder for you to do what you were promising to doing, which is mitigating the overflow. You know, just keeping more trees, it simply does help.
I appreciate what you're saying. We don't intend to clear cut it. And I also am likely going to be on one of those lots, and we want it to be a beautiful lot as well. We're not trying to hurt anything in that area. But it's just so ironic that nobody took into consideration our interest when the lots adjacent to ours were clear cut.
Yeah.
So I just find this to be really unsettling, and that the onus is on us to do more studies, et cetera. And I'm not sure it's really required. And I feel like we're being pushed into it. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just trying to understand here.
Yeah. I don't know what the board's going to decide with regards to SWIP, right? But the comment was, if you can if you can keep buffers in place or trees that are mature in place, there could be a benefit to you. And I think that's what Mr. McPartland's, point was. The two houses will be next to each other. That's an opportunity maybe to keep some trees in between for the benefit of irrigation control.
And it's a personal preference, right? I mean, there's me, I'd want all the trees, and when nobody's seeing me, I don't want to see nobody, but it's, everybody's different, right? So,
Look, and relative to the studies that are required, right, the board can only ask for what we're legally allowed to ask for.
of course, right.
And if that's the maximum that we're legally allowed to ask for, then it's still something that's within our.
And we typically ask for, drainage analysis to make sure that post-construction doesn't impact the neighborhood. We hear that there's water issues here, and we just want to make sure that after this project's done, it doesn't worsen and hopefully improves the drainage in the area. And I know that's what you guys want also.
No, I appreciate that. And so I guess my next question would be that if it turns out with the water studies that they're putting water onto our property, will they be required to fix that?
Well, I'm not aware of any of those problems. It sounds like you probably aren't aware of that either, but you've walked the property.
Topography, that it looks like they're draining onto us. It doesn't look like we're draining onto anybody except our own other property.
Yeah.
So no, right? Because they have pre-existed, and the contours and the topography naturally drains from Rising Road down to Empire Drive. When the town and the planning board reviews new subdivisions, the standard is that there's an existing amount of water that's flowing across the parcel at any given time. There always is. You cannot make it worse. You don't necessarily have to make it better, but there's pre-existing water that flows onto your property, and there's pre-existing water that flows off of your property. That is an existing condition that has existed since, the dawn of time. Water is not going to stop at property lines, but you cannot make it worse. And by de facto of adding impervious surface, you are adding additional surface water, which is why you have to do things like bring swales and stuff so that you're not negatively impacting existing homes. Sometimes if you're the last parcel, it's the short straw, and that is the way that it is. Sometimes when you do a traffic study, the two developments before you didn't trigger a traffic study, and you do. That is what happens, but the planning board just can't close an eye if they know that there's a drainage issue and be like, well, these other people, they got to do this, so we get to do that. That's not our evaluation. And if we know that there's an issue, it has to be addressed. We're not going to close our eyes to it.
And that makes sense to me, and I appreciate that. I think, in hearing things like sump pumps are running continuously, it's clay. It's what happens. We're not causing that, and I don't think anything that we do is going to cause further issues to why people's sump pumps are running continuously. It just seems like people are coming up with, anything they can think of to stop us, when it's really about they don't want to lose the trees that they don't own.
Well,
So-
the planning board, when they're listening, generalized discontent with the subdivision, and I think the chairman is trying to make that very clear, is not a legal reason for us to be able to deny a subdivision. But I think it's really important for you guys to listen to the knowledge that the planning board has had, having done extremely similar subdivisions to this, very similar, in areas that don't drain very well and have two driveways coming off a stub road. We've done 2 of these in the last 4 years, and drainage has been a huge issue. And when trees came down, it was problematic.
A lot worse.
So do what you can to keep those trees.
Oh, for sure, Laura, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate where you guys are all coming from. This is your expertise. I appreciate that. I think the discontent was it just didn't seem reasonable to me in terms of how it was being positioned, that it's a water issue, it's a tree issue.
Okay. Well, worried about the trees impacting the water issue. So it's all interrelated. But the bottom line, I think it's reasonable what we're asking. You're going to document, summarize, how you're going to deal with maintaining the water on site and keeping it from leaving the site, right? And we're going to, as like we always do, send out, when there's concerns like this, to a town designated engineer, and they will validate what you say. If they come up with something that says, no, this isn't going to work, or there's a problem, well, then we'll feed that back to you. You'll get a copy of their review, And then, make, again, the neighborhood feel comfortable, to make the board feel comfortable.
And you'll be comfortable, right?
Right.
What if the water is draining
I
into
know.
your property? You're gonna have to solve it.
And Laura was also, I think there was an open item, I'm looking at my notes here, regarding whether the original subdivision had either a SWIP or a drainage
Yeah,
analysis.
I still haven't been able to find that
We can,
yet.
we find, is that something we can share with the applicant?
Yes, yeah, I
And the
talked to
public,
Bowen.
of
I will
course,
share it with
whatever,
him when I find it.
just so that it help you, if there is any known problems during construction or pre or post-construction, you'll have that information. We'll share that with you. The subdivision itself, and again, I'll say it again, it was always thought that this may be subdivided in the future or developed in the future as one family or two. And I guess the potential is there for maybe 3 or 4 if you have, maybe with an area variance required. But the proposal in front of us is for a 2-lot subdivision. I think the drainage, once we come through that, and it's validated, I think we'll just move forward. And I don't think we have a choice. As far as trees go, the tree council will walk the site. I haven't been on the site. I'll try to get out there. Mr. McPartland's a project lead. For your permission, we'll take a walk down the end of Empire and out to the site and just take a look to see what kind of growth we have, whether it's, old, solid growth or scrub or whatever. I'm not tree expert, but, tree council will walk the site and we'll do the best we can to maintain any trees that are outside of the building envelope itself, if we can. I think that's all we can do.
I did speak with Laura, and I did say anybody can go on the property, not anybody, but anybody.
tree
from
council.
Okay, appreciate it, and we'll take a look and see, all right? And
Thank you.
You get that information and we'll get the town designated engineer set up. We got a month, basically a month, right, to October 3rd is our next meeting. Hopefully you can get that in, we can get it reviewed before then, and then we'll have that discussion at the next meeting. And we should be getting close.
There was some mention about the time that when approval's granted, that we have to file for the properties. I'd like to know if that couldn't be, if you could entertain a time period a little bit longer, since now we're getting into winter. We may not be able to.
Well, so when the subdivision is approved, there's no time limit.
There's no time.
There's no
There's
time
no
limit on
time limit.
construction.
That's for site plan.
I can file with the
Yeah.
county later.
Well, you need to file within a certain amount of time of approval.
Oh, yeah, you're having a hard time filing with the county or pulling building
No, I
permits?
just said I have to do it. I have to
Yeah.
make all the Mylars up and present it to them and execute it. And then the town will be taxing me at a higher rate as soon as I do that. So I want to know if there's a certain time between your approval and
And filing the plats,
execute.
there is a certain time for that. We'd have to double check that. I don't know what
Would you
the
do that,
top-
please?
that is off the top of my head.
Winter's here.
Yep, sure is.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jarlman. We appreciate you stepping in.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you, everybody. And, this will continue on our agenda. Watch the webpage and we'll hopefully get some information. It'll be posted with the package on our webpage prior to the next meeting, so you can take a look at it. Okay, thank you, everyone. All right. 1747 Union Street, Rosada Gas Station, site plan application for the addition, which was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have, I know I got your name somewhere. I know I do.
Mr. Kaufman.
Kaufman, oh darn.
Dan Kaufman. Thank you.
So, Mr. Kaufman, I know that there was a late submittal. I believe it was sometime today. It wasn't in the package for the public and its board, since most of them work, probably didn't get an opportunity to take a look at it. So why don't you give us an update on where you stand? And then if you want, if Laura has access to that, we can at least pull it up and you can brief us on what direction you're taking and we can at least comment on it.
There was the discussion of the addition of the trees to the trees, and those were all added on the plans. The tree council. There was the addition of of a crosswalk from the handicap space over to the sidewalk. I added some space between the handicap space and the other two spaces. So there's more space for the, so if there's any handicapped person coming out of the,
Somewhere.
And then also I added the direction of the tanker truck through the property. It comes up, it turns in on Van Antwerp Road, and it goes out that first entrance, the western entrance of Union Street. I also added some more curb. But that's not, that's the rendering. Oh, we can talk, but we'll talk about the words on the screen right now. Or, I didn't see. We can talk about the rendering first if you want to. Okay. Give me a second.
I'm not seeing it.
I'm going too fast. I apologize. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. So,
It's supposed to be the new one. This today.
oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the one that came out.
In the
It
mail.
was this afternoon.
Yes.
Oh, I got it. I'll look.
It was in-
It's emailed to you guys separately.
Got it.
Thank you.
Um,
I remember that.
So this is the curbing, right, between
Yes.
pumps and the sidewalk. So you've added some curbing
Yes. Yeah.
to let
26
people
feet.
feel safe there on the sidewalk.
Yes.
And then you add some curbing down here to help with the cut through.
Yes.
And then there's planting plan throughout. You're proposing the columnar English oak, which was a suggestion specifically from the tree council. It's very narrow, but it'll end up looking slightly bigger than you have in your rendering. So it'll be a good shade tree if you can plant.
Right.
that one.
It'll take some time to
It
grow.
takes some time, but yeah, that will end up looking really nice there. And then the other thing you're saying is right here, right? You added.
Yes,
the
I added
striping.
that. I added that crosswalk.
Mhm.
And then there was let's see. Yeah, yes.
The truck delivery truck pathway.
Right.
Like
So,
this.
yes.
We had discussed one way in or one way out on one of the roads. Did you decide that that wasn't feasible?
It's, I mean, I'm okay with making one of those one way in or one way out. I guess I'm leaving it up to you, if the board feels that. I'm okay with, we're okay with doing that.
At which location?
The
Would be the
you-
southwest
Yeah, you would want
along Union, right before the corner of Van Antwerp.
out only.
Correct.
that would be yes.
So the Nemesis corner is coming westbound on Union, and where your directional arrow is for the tractor trailer that's coming out onto Union, that's where they cut through over to VA. So if that was the only egress, you still keep the ingress and egress to the right on Union. The next one before where you modified the curb with the little S on the
Yes.
corner,
Yes.
if that was egress only onto Union Street with simple striping, arrows, I'd like to not have signage there if possible, because I think that the streetscape could be enhanced with the planning plans along the sidewalk there.
Right.
Hard to police it, but at least with the arrowing, that may help.
Yes. So right. So you're talking about the west entrance on Union Street, or
Yes.
right, the western entrance to Union Street. So that would be only in
Egress only.
egress only.
Correct.
So then we'd have to take the tanker truck.
Same path.
Same
Same
path
path.
as tanker.
Your tanker truck is leaving the parking lot, heading south, going onto Union Street, and then taking a right.
Okay, I'll be out.
Out only.
Yeah,
Oh,
out only.
okay, that'll be
It'll work with the tanker truck perfectly.
Right.
So that would be okay. I got you.
I mean, I'm okay with that. The only thing that bothers me is like, trying to prevent people from cutting through things by, putting an arrow down. Obviously,
It's not gonna do anything.
they cut through, the arrow's not going to stop them. What's going to make it harder, it'll make it harder for, well, I guess depending which direction you're coming, you said, you know how sometimes you pull into the gas station, if there's cars there, you have to get on the other side or whatever. So it kind of limits that opportunity, how you pull in when you see vehicles parked at the pumps, you know. But I'm okay with it if that would,
Yeah, I mean,
you know.
I think we were pending that decision for seeing the tanker truck.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And so if it's moving there, I think
Yeah.
moving that exit only is.
And I agree, David, no signage, you know, it'd just be an arrow on the ground. People may still, you know, tend to violate it, you know, but what are you going to do? Let's just, you know, have a police car sit there the whole time. I mean,
I like what's on the corner. I think you've widened it by about just under 10 feet, which is good. So it's going to make that quick shooting across that corner of your property. It will limit that, and it definitely reduce speed
Yes.
at least. So I think that's good. You get more landscaping out of it, and I think all the other updates are good. What you did along VA by the second fueling island to delineate that along the sidewalk will help a little bit. The dumpster's been removed, and that rear property line has been cleaned up, which looks nice. So to have that planting there on the northwest corner, I think will be good. The parking spaces are spaced out better, and having the handicap one with some, you know, parking delineation on the blacktop is fine.
Okay.
Do you think, David, that recontouring the sidewalk where the proposed concrete curb is going might help visually kind of show drivers the points of ingress and egress? Typically, you'd see the concrete sidewalk actually slope down where the curb cut is, but this is just level with Van Antwerp.
And I think maybe Mr. Koff can answer this question. The pre-existing condition, at least along VA, is that everything's flush.
Yes.
That's the roads have been paved, so the height of the road is one such that we can't really delineate a curb because the lot would have to be elevated at times.
Or you would just elevate the sidewalk.
Well, that would be a full sidewalk replacement all the way along VA.
Yes.
So what it would be is you're coming down Van Antwerp at the end of the new peninsula. That would then be at grade. It would jump back up by the curbing, correct?
I mean, I'm just proposing a little hump for the 26-foot length of the proposed new
okay.
curbing,
Oh, I see. Okay.
just so that visually.
Somebody doesn't drive
Because
up.
otherwise, the only thing that's standing between the roadway is this small little curb.
Yeah, there's a telephone pole.
Yeah, I mean,
6-inch concrete curb.
Yeah.
So it's that
Yeah.
raising of that sidewalk, is that that's the cost of the property owner, even though it's a sidewalk to towns?
I believe the capital improvement would be on the owner, correct?
Yeah, the owners in this unit are responsible for
Yeah, VA's account, well,
What'd the dentist do up the road?
So normally though, the
Molino.
sidewalks are the responsibility of the owner and developer. They redid their sidewalks, Molino redid his sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Came out nice.
Yes.
who's that, Laura?
Molino and Vaccaro.
Oh, okay.
1759
Yep.
Union Street redid their sidewalks.
So it would have to be raised up all 6 inches, you're saying?
I guess
Or
I'm
is
not
it-
really understanding what you guys are saying.
Well,
No,
I,
I understand because it's, I was before proposing a 6-inch curb, separating it. Now you're saying what we could do is
Raise the entire sidewalk.
raise that 26 feet of the sidewalk
he's
up
thinking this
6
area right here.
inches. Now
Right here. Right.
or maybe we could ramp it a little bit, because the thing is that if everything is flat on the road, how is that, I mean, I don't know, maybe just.
you'd be putting a curb on both sides and you'd be filling the middle with concrete.
Okay, so, okay, so we're raising up
Right, but
basically.
you're creating a
curb,
step
okay.
for pedestrians though, right? So
It'd be sloped like it'd be sloped like.
We could have a ramp, we could have a ramp.
Right. It
I
would,
mean, it's even, those entrances are very big. I mean, I can work on that. to make that work.
That would be nice.
So with that, you'd have to look at what the county's provisions are for adding a curb there.
Oh, yes.
A couple things. You may end up having to do a road cut with a granite curb. I'm not sure exactly what the county has. I know some county roads do have like concrete slip form curbs, which I'm assuming you're trying to do everything in concrete here.
It's usually, I think it's gonna be, simpler and cheaper, but if we have to use.
Correct. You just got to check with what, because that is got to be within the county right of way.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the county did let us do a concrete curb on that street.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that'll probably be okay.
That's true. That's
Okay.
true. Yeah.
So I need some help here, Laura. Could you zoom in on the section that we're talking about and summarize it so that we all understand? I'm having a little bit of difficulty here. Maybe just me, but I got a feeling.
Okay. So where the utility pole is, just above that, probably by about 6 or 7 feet, the entire length of that curb that goes along the sidewalk, right past the words that say lighting typical, that would be slightly ramped up with a curb, run the length of that filling station canopy basically,
Gotcha,
and then
okay.
come back down.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
just prevent somebody from pulling in off of Van Antwerp in that location
Correct.
and provide a safe place for pedestrians crossing.
We're basically
Yeah.
raising the sidewalk.
Mhm.
Because that was one of the comments last time on my notes was that we're concerned about pedestrians walking that way and having a safe rescue location and this would provide that also.
I mean, I walk this a lot and this is my neighborhood. So it's great that VA has a sidewalk, but you're right there next to traffic the
Yeah.
whole way up to the schools. So, it's a tight area. Anything that can be done to make that better would be good. Because there are a decent amount of people that walk down Union and do take a right hand. And then a lot of people from the plaza are crossing, at VA across there too. So if they have at least some sort of delineation there, I think it would be helpful. And whatever that 6 inches is for that ramp, do it in so much that you can crown that sidewalk so that you're not putting any ADA detectable warning surfaces in.
Okay,
It'd just be a tough location for it.
okay, no.
But I think with the 6 inch height difference, that's pretty manageable
Yes.
to get a slope sidewalk in.
Yeah. And VA only has the sidewalk on the eastern side of the VA. It's the
Correct.
It's the only thoroughfare. It's not on
Right.
the west side.
Mhm.
Right.
So we connect them, right? We connect
Connects
you.
it.
Kind of clean way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Laura, remind me on the parking spaces. I remember the parking spaces in front are 18 foot. Is that the code?
Yeah, we changed it
Because
to
it was 20 and it went back to 18? Is that
9
right?
by 18 is our code now.
Okay. I remember it changed because some point in time there.
Okay.
All right, so that's compliant, and the other ones are just larger than required.
Yeah,
So-
I made 4 and 5 a little longer just because they're
Parallel parking.
parallel parking to give people a little more space.
Gotcha. That's all. That looks good. The let's see, I'm just looking at my open items here. The bollards for the propane storage, shows them, I think it's 5 foot on center.
Yes.
And there was a question, is that what's required for that propane
Well,
storage tank?
it's a 5 foot on center is a standard separation distance
For
protection.
for an automobile to,
Yes.
I didn't know. I remember we went through this with Stewart's or somewhere about, I didn't know if the propane vendor had a requirement or whether there was an
I couldn't find a
or
a
NFPA.
requirement, but I know that's used in pump stations and used in a lot of.
Okay. As long as it'll keep a vehicle from pulling into it, that's all that counts.
Right.
All right. Gotcha. Okay. Just wanted to follow up on that. Any other questions?
I just wanted to mention that the CAC regularly recommends that the owners, if they can, when they're going through site plan, that they do green additions to their buildings. So, as much as you can with LED lighting and sustainability with your materials. And then also, after you get the beautiful plants and everything in on the site, that you, if you can, try to maintain them pesticide free. Those are pretty standard recommendations from the CAC. They had also, they were very supportive of sidewalk improvements and really felt like the trees were critical to the site plan approval. Also cleaning up the site they thought was critical to the Upper Union Street corridor. And they were wondering if the outdoor area lights, if there are any, and if they can be, like, there's a thing that's called dark sky, and it just means that the outdoor lights don't shine up to do light pollution. I don't know if there's area lights in there. Do you know?
I know there's street lights on the corners.
Yeah, but not specific to, does the site have its own area lights at night?
I mean, not that I've really noticed myself, no.
I mean, under the canopies, there's.
Yeah, there's canopies.
Oh, the canopies have lights.
canopy lights,
Well, those
so-
are probably naturally
But-
dark sky though, because they're not going to shine.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think other than that, there's a couple in the building, but that's it.
Okay, just things to think about: sustainability, pesticide free, and dark skies.
Yes.
So as far as
Got it.
this new site plan, the only addition is the raised sidewalk along the pumps along Van Antwerp. Is that the only difference I'm hearing?
Yeah, and then just include the updated renderings where the doors are moved, the
Yeah,
facade.
that's,
I know that came in also. It'd be good for the board to see the final package for the next meeting, and then we can get
okay.
take it to the next step.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the other option, or the other thing tonight was changing that to egress only along Union Street, the west.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we still have to provide a new site plan at the next meeting, and then you have to go to another meeting for resolution, you're saying?
Before the next meeting.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable, since we've gone through this a few times,
Yes,
to be ready to call for a tentative resolution if the last couple of modifications are made.
okay.
And we can get them in a timely manner in the package.
Well, I can get
That's what
those,
we're
yeah. I mean,
getting
I
on.
have 4 weeks, I can even get them in 2 weeks.
Just to be clear, tentative resolution for the next meeting or call for a tentative resolution at the October 3rd meeting for the following meeting?
Correct. The second
Okay.
one.
Right, so we'll have one more meeting and we should be able to nail this down at the October 3rd meeting is what I'm
Okay.
hearing.
Yes,
All
we
right.
get the final package, we'll call for resolution, and then in
All right.
October, there's another meeting right after the 3rd.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so there's, yeah, under 17.
There is another
17th,
October.
yes.
Yeah, that's what
So-
it is. Yeah.
so the same.
And then, in as far as conditions, Laura, I know you've been keeping tabs of things, with condition about, cleaning up the site, architectural review, if we talked about that, get their input.
I would have been comfortable calling for a tentative resolution at the next meeting, but provided he submits what we asked for today, but that's fine. If we have to do it in October, that's fine.
I'm good either way.
The plan doesn't show a dumpster enclosure. Did we, I know that was up in the air based on parking.
No, the dumpster is there.
Yeah, enclosure.
Something
Oh,
that
Oh, you
prevents it.
like an
line of s-
enclosure around it, you're saying?
That's right, with a
Okay.
gate, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that was, and this goes back a couple meetings, was one of your plans was changed. Okay, you don't have egress going out back to the dumpster anymore. You have storages next to the proposed walk-in cooler on the plan. That was with this package, correct?
The storage of, you're talking about floor plan?
Correct.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but I can.
Okay, no, I think that was modified. Before you had a door that came out to the dumpster. Now you don't.
No, there was no door gonna be, right, we're moving that door that was in the back. We only had the door on the side for deliveries.
Correct. Now it's facing the bank.
Yes.
And I guess while we're on the topic of floor plan, at one point, the applicant was considering not having a counter. Thank you.
Yes, but that was fixed. That
That's,
was fixed.
okay.
That was resolved last
It's
meeting.
demarcated.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Yes,
So that's
more- it's
in the
conventional.
front of the store when you first walk in.
Yep.
Great.
yes.
Do you know generally where he stores snow at this site over the winter?
No, I don't. I can find out. You want snow storage?
Yeah, if it takes up kind of general parking spots or where he typically puts it,
Okay,
or if he trucks it off site. Like most people don't do that here though.
okay.
And the other open item, it's been through police and fire already?
Yeah,
So-
they didn't want us to necessarily close any curbs down, but I think, well, we can run it past them again with,
Yep.
I think they'll like the plan with the one only out at that close.
Yep. And then the other thing, the county want to look at it again, right?
Yep, so the county's main concern with the second referral, they withheld their planning board referral. They only did a zoning board referral, was that they've been working on the site tried for their Upper Union Street corridor, and they would really like to see it cleaned up and in harmony with the remainder of the corridor. But I think that these plans address a lot of that,
Right.
so if we just put a general condition about cleanup. I know Kevin, was it Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah, the barrels in the back and
Yeah.
stuff like that. We don't know what they're for.
Yeah, I haven't been over to see if they're still there or not, but there was some 55-gallon drums that were unlabeled and,
Okay.
is it rainwater? Is it oil? Is it, what?
But basically, those got to be removed.
Yeah, it's got to be cleaned up, just the site in
Right,
general.
yeah,
The
we-
tree was growing out of the back of the building there.
Oh, yeah, he knows all about that.
I mean, we cleaned it up. So if you make all these changes and get it in, not at the last moment,
I
sooner, and then Laura can send it out to the county and to whoever else needs to review it, so that when October 3rd, we're ready to call for a resolution.
Okay.
And then you'll be approved
All right.
in October.
Right, now, so with the, okay, so you look at the lighting in the dark around the station, basically.
Yeah, but
Those
what
are just like general comments from the CAC.
yeah, what additional lighting on the building do you propose? Is there any additional lighting, dumpster enclosure, the other items?
Yeah, I don't think they're proposing any additional
Yeah,
lighting.
so it's, clean it all up. The sooner you get it to us, and sooner Laura can get it out.
Yeah, okay, so you need some detail. Okay, all
A
right,
good example for exterior lighting is you now have a new door facing the bank.
yes,
Probably have a fixture above the door.
that's true.
So
Make it LED and have it not shine up into the sky.
correct.
Okay,
There's your example.
Thank you.
So we're just about there. Bottom line.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think the landscaping and the islands and the curbing will really improve that site.
Yeah, that's what the owner and I feel.
Yep,
Yeah.
and the building obviously being cleaned up and
Yeah.
consistent facades, it'll be better.
And then making the inside flow so that you don't have to go to the left into this weird spot to get to the counter. Like, I think the whole thing is gonna be much nicer.
Oh, yes, that's why they want the counter. That's why they wanted to put the cooler in the back.
It's
Not
gonna
putting it on this owner, but the county really should consider raising the entire sidewalk.
Yeah,
The
agreed.
entire boundary of property.
All right,
Well, if you raising the sidewalk
Yeah.
except for the entrances, basically.
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, have, real curb cuts, non-flush sidewalk.
Yeah, well, Union Street is the county's too, so,
Yes. I mean, since they're planning on.
yeah, so
improving it,
Union and Van Antwerp are both the county right of ways.
Okay.
Mr. Kaufman, are you clear? Do you have any questions?
No, I'm clear with it.
And if you get it in, Mr. DiRpino and Laura will share it with us through email, so,
Okay,
we can help out
all right.
to make sure you.
No, I understand the types of curbs and stuff and that kind of stuff.
And like for the dumpster enclosure, if you do chain link fence, it has to have the slats and stuff, so that's not full see-through, or you can do,
Or do vinyl.
or vinyl,
Yeah.
but not white vinyl. I don't know, that's your call.
Something that matches the building, that doesn't stand out, something that blends in.
Okay, the dumpster enclosure's got to blend in, okay.
It'll make it look nice.
Laura, while we're talking about the county referral and just the, Upper Union Street neighborhood improvements, I mentioned this once before. I thought, even though it's almost 10 years old now, it might be nice to at least see the synthesis study that was provided in connection with the comprehensive plan many years ago. Apparently, it's referenced in the plan, they analyze potential upgrades to pedestrian access and the roadways in that neighborhood.
They did, yeah. They were creating a full packet for Upper Union Street.
Yeah, I did reach out to Synthesis, left a message for one of the partners, didn't hear back. So I will put that on my to-do list.
Yeah, because,
Unless we already have.
I mean,
You thought you could obtain a native copy or an
Yeah,
original
the
copy.
PDF copy, I think the
I have-
comprehensive
it's-
plan is
it's pretty poor, but I do
pretty
have
poor.
it.
So there's probably first generation renderings and PDFs or formats that would be better visuals that we could get from them. So I'll place another call. But it is a good study and it's worthwhile to take a look at. Okay, all set, Mr. Kaufman?
I mean, yeah, I mean, just the, I gotta check to see how close that pole is to the sidewalk to make sure we don't impact the utility pole also.
Okay.
I don't want to have to deal with that. Well, do we have to provide all the details for all this, basically, of the curbing and the trees? Just basically to have notes, no pesticides, all that kind of stuff?
That's just something that you usually bring back to the client and see if you can get them to agree to.
Alright.
But no, you don't necessarily, I mean, I would love to see notes, but we don't normally see notes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just know on the final plans, sometimes that's required.
Yeah, well, a lot of times it's sometimes like the sustainable initiatives, the LED lights and stuff like that. They're not too expensive now. They will
No.
save your client like.
Oh, I know the LED,
future.
I know.
Yeah, well, it's
LED.
not just LED. There's a bunch of things you can do in those that'll, maybe even if it's just a little additional cost now, but it's good for the environment and it'll be cost saving in 8 to 10 years, even
Oh, yeah.
that. Yeah.
I understand. Okay. Okay. All right.
Any questions, Mr. Kaufman? You all
No.
set?
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's see, we're at 2209 Knott Street, and that's the Broken Inn. Is Mr. Nicky online tonight?
Yes, I am. Top of the morning, everybody.
Hello. All right, so I know that, again, we received a package, well, an email, wasn't included in the package for this board or the public, and my guess is that since most of the board members work, they probably didn't even have an opportunity to take a look at where you're at. So maybe we can start out, if it's okay with Dave, you can update us on what you provided.
From myself, is that right?
Yep, that sound good?
Okay, sure. So since the last meeting, I was asked to provide an aerial view by MJ Engineering that showed the proposed design, including a fog line, kind of identifying where the street line would be. So I provided that. I was asked to provide hours of operation, which essentially coincide with the existing hours of operation, except the outdoor dining area, which shut down an hour prior to the restaurant. But I did break that down, open 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Friday, and then 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. On the weekends as well. I outlined the numbers of tables and chairs, 4 tables that will each seat 4 people, 3 tables that each seat 2 people, for a total of 22 people that we can accommodate in that area. I did provide some specifications related to the lighting that we look to add outside, and also some photos that help clarify the type of lighting. None of the lighting that we would look to add in any way shines towards either neighbors or traffic. It's more for ambiance than anything. We already have adequate safety lighting. There's not going to be any live music played in this area. I wanted to make that abundantly clear. And we do intend to serve food and beverages, including alcoholic beverages, obviously in accordance with Schenectady County Health Department and the New York State Liquor Authority. I also provided a photo just as a point of reference, because I know it's been a topic of conversation since prior to submitting for temporary barricade, if you will. Just popped my head out the door about a week ago, took a picture of a car that was parked there, and I don't know if that was something you'd be able to review or not, but it was included in that package as well. Just to show what we're dealing with on an almost daily basis.
Okay, is that a problem?
No, I'm trying to pull that picture.
Oh, I was trying to pull it up, okay. All right, all right, thank you, Mr. Nicky. As far, this one, you say live music, just to be clarified, any music, is there, speakers gonna be put outside, not live, just music outside in general?
No, we have no plans to put any additional sound outside.
I'm not trying to be a pain, but it says live music, others, okay, what about, other music, so, and
Oh, yeah, no, that's the kind of thing we couldn't contain anyway, so it's not something that we would want to do.
understand, and that's why I gotta ask, how about a TV outside?
No, if you want to watch TV, come on in.
Okay. And, while Laura's trying to pull that, oh,
I got him.
you got it? Okay.
So that's the lights. More lights. That's how close the cars keep parking there.
Yep.
And that's the wattage of his lot.
Yep.
And then this one is the new one.
And since the last meeting, I think Chairman Walsh had suggested, and it makes sense, to eliminate the parking space you see at the bottom left there that has the big X, the black area. We are net +4 parking spaces now, utilizing this configuration versus the existing configuration. And I would only add to that at present, there is no striping for parking in this area. So while in theory we're at net 4, we're really in actuality going to end up probably net 7 based on how people are parking currently.
Yeah, so my thought there, and, I'm sure the board agrees, is that we just didn't want if there was no car parked there, and everybody just kind of scooting through all those parking spots. So, we want to put something there, whether it be, leave it to the board, whether it be striping or whether it be a planter or a tree, something to delineate that end of the row. So I'm open for suggestions. David, I don't know if you have any thought there. Whether it's just, hash marked or something, whatever, just try to prevent cars from scooting through, just like
You wanted a street tree.
It can't,
yeah.
I just don't, it has to be an object. In the winter, you're never going to see
I understand, that's
line,
that's why,
right? I mean, that's what my vote would be. What's
yeah,
that?
A street tree.
Street tree.
Yeah,
a planter or something, yeah.
Plan or something, yeah.
I agree. I think it would be nice to have something there, but currently the configuration and the rendering's great that we have that shows the axonometric of the cafe lights and the umbrella tables and the planters. I just think that there's the ability that Mr. Nicky has the opportunity to do something outdoors, but the longer plan with the town would be to come up with, and maybe this involves Metroplex to some degree a year or so from now, but to delineate that area that's different than Blacktop. Planners maybe have the ability to get some trees in there that would be part of a larger plan so that, whatever the planters are, they could be either shifted or moved or something like that. So that, it's almost like a two-stepped approach, get the outdoor seating and then not burden Mr. Nicky with all of the enhancements that have to go there. Because part of the plan also is that the area to the left of the entrance would be, we're calling a community space. Other businesses could also use that too. So whether they're going to chip in monetarily to get benches or something like that, maybe that's something he does internally with the other businesses, but to get more towards this, I guess, this completion goal, I'd love to see some trees, whether it's even a couple on the corners or 4 total, I think would go a long way along that facade area.
Yeah.
And I like the raised planters too, the nice wide raised planters.
Yeah.
I think they look.
Yeah, and especially if they're portable, like you said, if things change or that parking spot just, it's temporary, just to delineate it, and, because it's safety too, trying to delineate the road. But it goes back to my question I had, last board meeting, which, who's doing what and who's responsible for what. And I think we need to understand that to have a public hearing at this level or at the town level. I'm not saying who does, I'm not sure. And we may not have answers of who does what, and that's okay. As long as we say we don't know at this point in time, that's to be established, So for instance, the fog line, was that the town? Was that Mr. Nicky's responsibility? Striping all these parking spaces, is that the town? Is that Mr. Nicky or the building owner's response? Those kinds of things. It's not clear to me, as we go forward, and if we approve this plan, what will actually get done and who's responsible,
Yeah, there was an updated plan today that shows the fog line with the delineated parking spaces, and then the ADA spaces were demarcated in blue. If that crosshatch was taken off of that plan and you were to spot place the tables or the planners or whatever, just have them do an overlay on this of what your investment would be for this outdoor space, and then the hatch maybe on the other side that you're proposing that's open to be whatever it is, just demarcated space. That would answer some of the questions that the board.
In terms of who's financially responsible, I'm sorry, I'm confused as to what is being sought here.
All right. So your proposal for outdoor space right now has a demarcated plan, which I think reads pretty well. But the rendering that you have that'll be part of that plan, if you could marry those two together to basically show where you're going to put the planners, where the proposed tables would be, the total of the 22 outdoor seating. And then if those benches are going to be by somebody else and not by you, then label them as such on that other area. If you're planning on buying 7 more benches, that's great. Then show that way that we can see it. And then you're providing benches, yet other people come use that when your business is not open. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
So you're looking for another drawing that essentially is a floor plan, for lack of another term?
Just an overlay of this, just to clean it up so that rendering and this drawing shows where the seating is, what you're proposing. I think the parking looks good. We should determine what that X is going to be, whether it's raised or not. Personally, I would like to see a long-term plan that involves, I guess the town will be more involved than that. But even, I'm okay with striping. I know in the winter it's going to be problematic, but maybe that's a larger planner that's got something in it. The problem is when you have the snow removal and the plows there, you're going to want to have snow removal in the parking spaces, and it's got to get away from the alleyway. That's the reality of those delivery trucks that have to get in behind there.
And the snow has always been pushed into this grassed area, if you will. It's to the left of the parking space, just let's call it the west side of Crescent. This area has always been plowed in its entirety.
Who takes care of that? Is that the Langs, or is that the town? Who does the plowing there now?
I think previously it was Lang's because they owned the first 3 feet off the building, but it's been something that was discussed even up to and including the ribbon cutting as to who's responsible for plowing all of the parking spaces now, since this new construction has been done. Because I believe they lost the ability to plow across the street on Knott Street. I haven't been privy to those conversations, but it is town land.
County. Well, the other side is the county. This side is the
Correct.
town land.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, that's part of the deal with a permanent special use permit for this area is that you would probably have to do, some kind of a maintenance agreement with the town, at least for the area that is going to be, I know you said that sometimes people could sit at the tables maybe, but for the sole kind of benefit of the Broken Inn, like that area would have to be maintained and
Yeah, but as we listed in the detail, we're making ourselves responsible for the maintenance and cleanliness of this entire checkered area. We're also, as I detailed there, making ourselves financially responsible to provide all the apparatus, the tables, the chairs, the benches, the bike rack, all those things.
Yeah, so I guess
That's listed in the detail.
So like what I'm envisioning, what David is saying is like when we put something out to bid, it shows, that you're going to furnish these benches and stuff, and some of it's to be done by others, and some of it is, this is what I'm doing. So like because no, well, people read, but it would be very helpful to have it.
Yeah, well, that helps me out, right?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to explain this, the narrative, the perspective, and then this plan all being cohesive, because we've seen this and we've discussed it, but you're going to be going to the town board. You're going to have other people that are going to be asking maybe some basic questions, but just to take this plan here, where everybody knows where the hatch is. Yeah. And then take that, show some tables where the planners are, and they can see it in plan view. They can see the perspective. And if they've read the narrative, it's all cohesive.
Yeah, because, that rendering shows like a step there, right? Like a raised patio, right? But that's not the plan. The plan is just, it's paved now. It's going to stay. Is it going to be repaved?
It does not show a step. Those are parking bumpers that you're
Okay, I'm
looking at.
sorry. Thank you.
But it also does not show a step where on the site plan, there is one. So to Mr. Darpino's point, I think we do need to reconcile these differences in the site plan, which will receive final approval, and this rendering, which is informative, but not really the guiding document.
Sure. Could you explain where you're seeing the step on the drawing from MJ?
It says proposed 5-foot concrete walkway, and it's not hatched, and it runs along the side of the building. So I guess I assumed it's raised, but we're saying that it's not. It would just be
just a clearance.
Oh no, that's here it is. You're
so that's just infill.
This is all right. So that's a sidewalk that will be against the building that would allow people to come down around Langs and walk through the area around the back of the buildings. Correct, Mr. Nicky?
Correct. Along the side of the building, on the west and north side of the existing building, but it's not a built-up raised sidewalk. It's a 5-foot clearance as exists currently when people don't park up against the building.
Is it concrete or asphalt currently?
Currently, it's asphalt.
No.
That's what it says.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But you're proposing to make a concrete one?
No, that's something that we'll have to correct that MJ just put in there.
Okay.
And that area, the hatched area, is that level with the pedestrian respite island at the southeast corner of this drawing?
It's not level with what was built up through this build out, but there is ADA access that is level from this area to that area.
So so the hatched area, the proposed outdoor dining area, sits lower than the new sidewalk.
In some places, that's correct. Because if where the sidewalk essentially wraps around the building, that grades down to the same level as the asphalt to allow for wheelchair accessibility.
The whole area has a gentle slope from the building down to Crescent. It's not perfectly flat, which is another thing. Yeah.
It'll be a grade here.
Yep,
And
but
this will be a slightly raised curve here.
Right.
This will be a slightly raised curve here as it comes back to where it connects to the county.
Is there a step up into your restaurant?
No, there's not.
So threshold is flush with the existing grade.
That's correct.
So we're kind of limited in that regard.
Limited in terms of what?
You can't.
To build a step
Yeah, you
or a sidewalk?
You couldn't build the sidewalk higher without impacting the.
No, and I don't know that there's a benefit. In fact, I think there's probably more of a safety issue if you're going to build a sidewalk between the building and the seated area where people have to step up and then back down into the seated area.
I agree, but then we are just relying on these concrete barriers that would be installed in each parking space to protect the diners. Obviously, you do also have a plan for benches and planters. But I'm thinking more,
Correct.
I'm thinking more about, traffic on Crescent Road and Clifton Park Road, and how visually do we really delineate this as kind of a pedestrian area? And to that end, if the parking spaces on the northern end of the proposed area are not occupied visually, I would agree with what the other members have said. I think you may have to sacrifice 1 or 2 parking spaces and have some type of a curb there with a street tree. How else do you?
I'm all for more greenery. I would only just advise that anything you build up in that area becomes something that can obscure people's view as they're going from one street to another, or as they're backing or pulling into a parking space. Relative to the curbs, I believe the section 312, I think Clark probably would be much more up to speed with me, that barriers that can resist or visually deter impact can be approved by the municipality. And that of course is where these planters, in addition to the parking curbs, come into play, is that they are something to visually deter you from continuing to drive forward.
Yeah, so something that the CAC noted was that you have the planters around the restaurant areas, but not around the benches. And they're just concerned about the safety of the people sitting in the benches. Because it was my understanding that the planters, although they're beautiful, are essentially going to take the place of the barriers that you have filled with water, and which they'll be like DOT standard. If a car accidentally drove into them, they would stop the car, right?
Well,
Per the section of the fire code that I was just describing, it allows you to say that as long as the barriers are visually going to deter vehicle impact, they can be approved by the municipality.
Oh, right. Okay, that's what you were talking about.
Actually, that's the exact language. I'm just reading it right now. Section 312.3, other barriers. Barriers other than posts specified in 3.12, designed to resist, deflect, or visually deter vehicular impact commensurate with an anticipated impact scenario shall be permitted where approved.
So these would be those concrete barriers that would have the planters built over them with the.
No, per my understanding of what is written, if we utilize these barriers with these planters as the barriers, that would meet the code.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will.
And I'm just asking, how are they going to be constructed?
They'll be constructed out of wood, built up with a platform, and then obviously have the ability for us to put soil and greenery in the top.
Well, you also have the little concrete thingies at the end of each parking lot too,
Yeah.
that the tires can hit.
Is there an aesthetic guardrail type? That you run across this bumper rail?
Oh, well, I guess, go ahead, Daisy.
No, I was gonna say is what about, I'm thinking about, like Boston and many other cities now that have outdoor dining end up having like an aesthetic, wrought iron fencing or guardrail, so to speak, and then they put up the trees and barriers so that way aesthetically it's pleasing, but then, there's something more, more of a deterrent. If a car really does lose control, it's not going to crash into people. I guess I would be a little more nervous about just sitting in front of, a planter, so to speak.
So some of these planners I've seen, at least in Troy has them, and I think Saratoga has some too. The rendering that we see here, which is a large box, that could be clad in wood, but it can have a concrete deadman in it that also has a shallow planting bed that's set into it that can be serviced and taken out.
Yep.
It's probably 8 to 12 inches deep, depending what the plantings are, and those can be shifted or moved. So think of 2 of those water barriers combined together with a nice cladding around it. And I like the idea of that planter because it gives you the flexibility. If Mr. Nicky wanted to put a couple chains or something that were temporary connected to each of those to limit people walking through the dining area, they could easily do that. I guess the bigger question is that you have some benches on the north end that are, the backs are facing the people where you're parking. And maybe the simple reconfiguration is to just move those benches closer to the building or put them in a different configuration, or maybe leave that open for now with a couple benches there and, see what other things have to manifest. But the area basically from the end of the restaurant where the angle starts back to Knott Street, where those planters are, I think is more than sufficient. Even if you wanted to relocate the one planter that's at the end of the store over to where the last parking space is, where the benches are, and have simple chains in between, that I think that would, delineate. There's some simple moves that could delineate that a little bit easier.
Yeah, well, it's both delineation, but also a safety factor from the parking, right?
Right.
But
Yeah, because, Clark, I think, did some research some time ago for other places that have outdoor eating, and in most cases, they were just bollards basically put between the parking and the picnic tables or whatever, which we know, have a certain design requirement. In this case, we're looking at the plantings to substitute for the bollards, so we need to, maybe not for the public hearing, but sooner or later, we need to understand how they're constructed, right? Whether the water-filled tubes are going in them and a box built around them, whether there's going to be a concrete movable barrier put in there with a bottom put on top of it so that you can put the plantings in. I think we need to have those details, right, in order to be able to approve them. We got to know what we got. So Mr. Nicky, we just the detail of that. I don't know if we need it for the public hearing, but we need for approval, we need to understand how they're going to be constructed.
Yeah. And the rendering shows it pretty well. I know everyone's talking about this stuff. I don't like the small raised parking curbs that are in front of a planter. I think it's redundant. I don't think it's necessary. They're going to be problematic when you do have snow removal. If you have them in areas where the planters are not, and there isn't a raised curb, that makes sense. To me, I think that's the use of them on the north end of the site and not making them redundant in front of the planters. To me, I don't think you need them there.
Well, the bottom line is, any place anybody's sitting, they got to be protected from a motor vehicle.
And
Right.
the spacing of the plant is such that a car can't get through, just like a bollard would be in front of.
As Mr.
anything else.
Kaufman just said, bollards was 5 foot, right? So.
Mr. Nicky, I have a more pedestrian question.
Sure.
Will you be staging any service, like busing of tables, like moving material to a stage and bringing it into the restaurant, or will service be continuous from in the kitchen?
Yeah, no, there'd be no operation taking place outside of the building. I think that's what you're asking me. There'd be no staging, there'd be no service bar, there'd be nothing like that at all.
So even barring the discussions we've had about what I would call, further refinements of this plan, I think what the point from seeing this, at least I can remember when we first asked Mr. Nicky to have CTMA look at this, what was in my mind. So I'm going to go back to the question, who's actually responsible for what?
Well, I think that's what the comment was from Dave, is that he does the overlay on the drawing to update the drawing. You got the rendering of the seating area, put it right on there, what you're going to do. And then the notes on the drawing are going to state that. Mr. Nicky said, I'm going to, to be provided by the applicant, and the things that are to be provided by others, those are the things that we need to address. So whether it's be the fog line, whether it be the striping, I'm assuming that Mr. Nicky was going to do the striping because he was going to do the striping previously. But, again, that's my assumption.
But like shoveling of the area, like I think, and Mr. Nicky, you said
So,
maybe
yeah.
you have this in your.
Okay, so this is Mr. Nicky's chance to say, here's what I'm willing to
Exactly.
do, and here's what I don't want to do.
Correct.
Okay.
And have it on the overlay, so it's all consistent.
And not for nothing, we've done that in the detail, but it sounds like we're assuming that the public's not going to read the detail and look at the map and look at the drawing.
Yes.
My understanding is that we need to simplify this for people who are not willing to put in the time.
Yes.
So that's what we'll.
Yeah, I think that's basically what we're trying to get at, is to make this pitch as streamlined as possible so that all three are cohesive. That way you don't get into, I mean, we're able to dissect things a little bit deeper than maybe general public or some other committees or boards that may look at this. And if it starts stumbling early, I think just the next little pass might tie it all together. And then it's very clear what you're doing. It's very clear what long-term plans are. You know, I don't mind seeing the rendering with area demarcated from there. Simple painting could happen now if you wanted to, you know, which would be good. And then maybe down the road there, that all turns into concrete, which is flush with the blacktop. And then planters or bollards or a combination thereof, and where the benches are placed manifests into something down the road. But the intent of this would be is to get this footprint for what you're looking for to get approved for your special use permit.
And for whatever it's worth, just on that, I know we've had this debate, but that area does look raised in that render, in that perspective. I mean, there's an edge there. There's an edge in the drawing. Right? There's an edge right there.
Yeah, I think it's just the color change, but it makes it appear to look like, you know, a lip because as Mr. Dickey stated, those are just the.
No, understood. So I think a member of the public is going to look at that, think that that's a raised area. I'm gonna I guess that's something about it.
Well, that's because I looked at it quickly. I thought it was too, right? And I got straight.
So we got to figure out a way to make that look better.
Well, he's going to take the other.
We can make it all the same. We can make it all the same color. It's a change in color just for the purpose of visually to demark where the area is. Or the other alternative, as I think Mr. Darpino said, we can roll out paint over the top of that asphalt. But either way, I think at some point you have to read the detail in addition to the drawing. And we'll as we've been discussing, we'll summarize everything we can into one drawing and make it as easy to digest possible. But all of the questions, with the exception of how we're weighing down the planters, have already been answered in that detail. It's just a matter of delivery, I believe, at this point.
Well, if this rendering is going to be used in a presentation to the town board, I feel obligated to say I do not support providing parking for the two Porsche vehicles that are parked on the northern corner. I don't think that that's realistic. I think we're sort of redefining the roadway by adding this outdoor area. And that comes dangerously close to traffic coming off Crescent Road onto.
And all I would say is the rendering you're looking at, the drawing that you're looking at, was the one that was submitted prior to the last planning meeting. We haven't updated this rendering, obviously, because every time we do that and then we have a meeting, we have to move things around. So those two vehicles, I think the black vehicle and the white vehicle you're referring to, are no longer a part of the plan.
The site plan still does show one parking space there, and then the black area is not labeled. I'm not sure what that is.
That's where the white vehicle is in the drawing or the rendering now, but that's what we were just speaking about in terms of something permanent or a tree or something to that effect. But there's no vehicle parking in that space. We've blacked that space out.
Yeah, again, I think that the drawing, doing the overlays Dave suggested with, when you start putting, to be provided by the applicant, it makes it very what you're providing. And if there's things that aren't provided by you, then it gives us the opportunity to ask the question, who is providing them and when will they be provided in order to finalize this,
No problem. No, we'll provide that. I do have a question as it relates to our existing, I'm sorry, are there other things I can answer relative to what's been presented today?
Are those the only comments?
I was just gonna go so the tree council was super supportive, and Complete Streets were very supportive of the large pedestrian area. They felt like the advantage of this plan versus the town plan was providing more parking, but it was making it easier for people to drive. So you'd probably have higher vehicle use of the plaza, whereas this plan is making a very large community gathering space and would hopefully encourage more walking and bicycling to the plaza. So both boards were very supportive of the large pedestrian kind of outdoor space. But like the CAC had questions like where would, you know, like outdoor trash collection plan. I mean, some of this would be after, but like if cigarettes would be allowed to be smoked outside, or if it'd be no smoking outside as well. They also felt like because the cars were very close to where people were eating, that potentially like a no idling zone, so that people who were like kind of waiting to pick up their food or whatever wouldn't be idling in front of people who are eating outside. And then they were also just concerned with because generally speaking, our summers are just getting warmer and warmer, that this is so much asphalt that like those benches and stuff may not be used in the summer because they're going to get so hot. So they were just wondering if there's ways to add shade structures and stuff so that people would actually use them, because in the heat of summer, that area is just going to bake. But they loved the area. They just want to make it better.
Okay. And the CAC, since this is a special use permit, they make advisory for
Recommendations to town
seeker
board.
to the town
Mhm.
board who actually does a seeker. So,
Well, they wanted to see more green space and shade
Yeah.
because they're concerned with just heat issues in the summer out there.
right. Okay. What else you got, Mr. Nicky?
The question that I had, we are obviously approved for some temporary barricade that exists right now to allow for some benches for people who sit. What it also does, which was the original reason that we asked for it, is provide safety for people along that side of the building. Now we are, and I hope that I'm wrong about this, within weeks, 4, 6 maybe, of potential snowfall. So I have to be the one to say those words out loud. But we won't need to utilize the benches, but I will tell you that having a safety barrier on that side of the building, I think without question, as you can see from the photo in the area where there is no safety barrier, has accomplished what it's set out to do in keeping people walking along that side of the building, safe from people who are parking. I guess my ask for some feedback is are we, while we're going through this process here, trying to get an area approved that would have parking bumpers and planters and things of that sort, are we permitted to maintain, even when people are not spending time outdoors, that area for safety purposes, or that barricade for safety purposes? Because the moment we remove it, we introduce the risk again.
Well, the only question I would have, would it be collapsed, or is there any benefit to collapse it so that you just have a smaller distance between the building and just it's a walkway, right? The ice cream window will be closed at this point in time. So it's just basically.
Yeah, it would probably, I mean, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 feet off the building, something that would match, I assume, the sidewalk on the other side. But it would be there for the duration of the winter.
Yeah.
Or at least until this plan hopefully is approved and we can make progress on the
That
actual
makes sense to me.
construction.
Just the only thing I just challenge that we collapse it, to a reasonable distance, so it serves the purpose, I guess, because you're going to shovel between there and the building also. Somebody's going to, right? So,
Yeah, I would always be shoveling the sidewalk area as a tenant anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a non-issue. But boy, I do have to say, we certainly would all benefit from striping this thing instead of waiting another potentially 8 months to do so.
I mean, you're allowed to temporarily stripe, but you wouldn't be able to stripe this plan without town board approval. You could do temporary striping for what was the emergency approval.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that anyway because of the striping that took place from the town now going sort of perpendicular to what that striping would be.
Yeah.
So I don't, once we, even though we can't do the outdoor seating area, dining area, bicycle racks during the winter, I think once we get this to a point where it's been approved by the town and then back to this board, we can finally get the parking and safety items taken care of. So, for another day, of course, but for today, I would like to get permission to keep that plastic water barrier, albeit 8 feet off the building, for safety purposes until such a time where this plan is either approved or denied.
Yeah,
Yeah, that should be fine.
yeah, I don't see why not. Unless there's any concerns from any of the board members? I guess we just need to document it.
Yeah, I mean, it was put up there for safety. I think that there would sort of be
Yeah, I
a
mean-
non-benefit to removing it, so.
Ms. Gold has a comment.
Two, actually. I still don't know exactly where the property lines are back there, who owns what, and I would find that helpful. My outstanding concern, however, goes back to the parking, because we lost parking on the Knott Street side of the building. We're adding a lot of use with the outdoor dining area. And I'm really concerned if there's going to be enough parking, because all the parking has been shared all these years, and I think it applies to the back as well. I know I've never been stopped from using the back parking for anything.
No, the back parking is privately owned. They could.
It is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The highway
yet it's been
the
used
highway
so long.
boundaries on this
Yeah, the
drawing.
red lines on this drawing are the edges of.
Correct,
Yeah.
Which drawing? The one that came today?
correct.
Well, it's actually on every single drawing. It's
Yeah.
just, it's
Okay.
easier to
Just didn't
see on the
focus
one
on
that
it.
came today. Yeah, it's the long dash line that says HB, which stands for highway boundary. And that
Okay.
is actually the private property boundary as well.
So I know a lot of people have gone around the corner and parked behind Lang's to go into Lang's. And that's gone on for years. And I guess they own it, that's okay. But still, I'm worried with the additional use, and it really is. Going from what was there before to the restaurant in the first place was an increase in use. The outdoor seating is another increase. And I just don't know that there's going to be enough parking, and I worry that it's not fair to the other businesses. I worry that it's maybe not as safe as it needs to be. And that's my concern.
Okay,
I am pleased to see that there's like 7 feet, 2 inches, I think, from where you would expect a car to end. And the highway line,
Crescent to Clifton Park Road, you mean?
but I'm thinking not all vehicles are the same length. And I worry still about people getting in and out of there.
Well-
Sometimes having an extra long parking space makes up for those extra long trucks and such.
Well.
And we need to look at how to evaluate the need for more parking.
It's a tough site. You know, we've been through this obviously with the first approvals. I guess my view is that, you know, we're doing the best we can with what we got with a pre-existing condition. We will, you know, I think we're close, Mr. Nicky, if you could update the overlay that's got it, you know, that we're comfortable with, we can call for the public hearing, I believe, next meeting. I think we're darn close, right? We call for the public hearing at the planning board level. We'll have that public hearing and then take into consideration. So to Ms. Gold's comment, if the, you know, public or other owners of any other property in the neighborhood down there come down and, you know, talk about the parking, we'll hear what they have to say. We'll see if they share your concerns or not. And then we'll take that information and, you know, evaluate it and do what we need to do based on the information we receive in the public hearing. And then, of course, you know, town board will have another opportunity to also hear. So we'll take it through the process and if.
And I'm sorry, in terms of the process, because I'm just want to make sure I have this. The next meeting is on October 2nd, is that correct?
October 3rd, yep.
October 3rd. And at that meeting, are we still in discussion or are we having a
Well,
public hearing?
we'll be in discussion, but if you give us the information that we talked about tonight, we can validate it. And if we're all set to go, we can call for a resolution for the next meeting for a public hearing.
So the resolution to happen the meeting following the 10-3 meeting, is that correct?
I don't know if it'd be a resolution, we call for a public hearing, yeah. And then the public hearing would be the end of October
Yeah.
for planning board. Is that right, Laura?
Yep, I can tell you the date. It's,
And then we'd have the public hearing, and then obviously we, you know, hear what information we gather at the public hearing. And then based on that and where we stand, then we could make the recommendation to the town board, which wouldn't be that night, would be the following meeting. So that would be November. we make the recommendation to the town
October.
board,
Well,
and then the town board would have their public hearing. Most likely would be December, would be my guess, at the earliest.
yeah. October 24th could be the public hearing. You could do a recommendation November 14th.
Yeah.
Or the 28th. The town board has a really compressed November schedule because of the budget, so November's kind of out.
That's why I said December, they
Yeah,
could have their
December, they
public hearing.
would be available. Mhm.
Okay, we're getting probably a dozen contacts a week from people asking how they can participate in supporting us, and we keep telling them, stay at bay. There'll be a point where you can speak your mind, and I just want to
Yeah.
have answers for these people instead of continuing to tell them I'll get back to you.
Yeah, well, we're getting closer, and they're always welcome to come in. They're privileged of the floor at any meeting that we have. You can tell them.
I think they want to be there. I think they want to be there at decision-making time.
So, yeah, so like late October and then early December potentially.
Yep.
Okay.
And come
Got
back to us for the final site plan review, and then it should be all set for springtime to, get the tables going.
Okay, but we're at this point in time, all right, to keep the temporary water barricade through such a time where this is approved or seasonally, it makes sense safety-wise, so long as it's 8 feet off the building, is that right?
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Yeah, and then we can either capture it tonight, or you could send an email and you can confirm, 8 foot off the building if, I think we're good with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I can provide? Well, I only asked that because I think I'd known I could have provided this floor plan for, again, that's a gross term, I know, for people who know what the right term is. I just want to make sure that if I address putting everything into one concise document, that we don't find ourselves in another discussion in early November.
No, no, I don't, I think we're all set. But, my point was that when you put everything on there, you're going to state this is to be, provided by yourself or others. And that might lead to some discussion and like who's going to provide it and who's paying for it. But
Right, but if we're making all of the documents the same so that like you could look at any one of them and get a good picture, I think to Patrick's point, it'd be helpful if you could, take at least the one car out of the rendering and put some kind of a curb there in your rendering.
I'll make sure that the rendering matches this
And then
layout now.
potentially, maybe I would take the coloring out of the rendering to see how that looks so that it'll be more reflective of. Just
We
see,
can make-
maybe you could have both.
We
of
can make
them.
it less pretty. We can definitely make it less.
I mean, I looked at it and it looked like this beautiful concrete pad, and I was like, ooh,
Yeah, so-
but it's actually
and
going
so
to be
did I,
a
yeah.
slightly, it's going to be a slightly
Vicky,
gently
if you
sloping
just go to the
asphalt.
software they have it on. If you just check any intersection with a planter and that white area, there's a vertical line there.
It looks visually.
Well,
I see that.
Yeah.
So I interpret it differently, and I think that rendering to me shows striping there that comes up and it goes behind those raised parking curves, and then
The
it's,
white striping is clear and it's the same level.
yeah, it does. It runs up to, there's a little
But
gray
the
space
gray
there,
area,
but yeah, whether it's raised or not.
I mean, somebody just has to click on
Here.
that edge.
Yeah, I'll zoom in for you right here.
We agree.
Well, we'll debate this later, but
Okay.
I see that as
Go to the right.
right
no,
there.
No, go to the right.
Yeah.
Well, if we got to look at that level of detail, it's not going to help the public. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you think that's an edge?
All right.
It's vertically parallel to the.
It's
I think we're ready to move
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
Mr. Nicky, are we all set?
We are.
Please
I'm good.
Please reach out if any questions to Mr. DiRapino or the planning office, and, we'll get it straightened out before the next meeting, okay? If you have any questions?
Is it okay if I hand write on this plan here? Any issue with that?
As long as it's clear, I mean,
Okay. I love MJ Engineering, but we've spent plenty at this point to draw tables, would make a whole lot more sense.
and again, if you get it done soon, we can take a look at it. Project lead can take a look at it. We can get it out to email everybody at least to see whether it satisfies. If there's any questions, nothing wrong with that.
You will have it tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nicky. Thanks, Dave, and everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right. And thanks, Brett, for your patience. 2037 Aqueduct Road, Rivers Ledge. And I'm trying to think, do we had stuff in the packet. Yeah.
Good evening. Brett Steenberg, I'm here on behalf, Chuck apologizes. He had another planning board meeting, which I'm sure he could have attended and still made it here. And I will let him know that when I call him after the meeting. So,
Let the other planning board know that. so.
but in any case, you get me instead of Chuck this evening. And really, we're here this evening just as an update for the Rivers Ledge senior housing project. Since the last time, I think it was before this board, the applicant has received the approval for the height variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals, which has allowed them, they're proceeding with, and I know this board asked for a pitched roof. They're moving forward with the pitched roof, but this board also asked for a roof plan showing it, and that's something they're putting together now that they had to wait until to find out exactly what they were looking at from that standpoint. We also received the town designated engineer comments from Weston Sampson. I think there were 5, maybe 6 comments, not much in the way of comments, mostly detail, or matter of fact, I think almost all of it was just adding some water details and things like that, more constructability and detail oriented issues with the plans. We've addressed those. We haven't sent them back because we were waiting. And Laura had a few comments and planning had a few comments, which we addressed and sent back to Laura today. Some of those comments, and we can just talk about them briefly, was adding the sidewalk connection to the bike path and ultimately to the existing sidewalk within the site. Adding a patio, if we go back one plan, small patio area here between the senior housing and River Run Drive. Just to allow, if there's any in this commercial area located in this building, is a desire for outdoor seating or anything like that. If there's a coffee shop, they've got an area to go sit. And probably the larger of them was bolstering up some of the landscaping along between the building and Aqueduct Road. And I don't know why on the PDF it's getting so blotched out, the background text on the landscaping here. Maybe the PDF might still be loading up. But in any case, we did add a mixture of some additional deciduous and evergreen trees along this frontage. We are keeping a very tight tree clearing line right along here as well. So there actually isn't going to be a lot of room between where the tree clearing is and the edge of pavement to do some plantings. But where there is that room, we are proposing some additional plantings. We have submitted the final permit application to the Army Corps of Engineers for the wetland impact permit, as well as the mitigation plans, which will be occurring at the Animal Protective Foundation on Maple Avenue for some stream restoration work. And I know Chuck also sent one of the other items you had asked for was the cross section from the Elplaws side through and how that's going to view. And do you have to have a copy of that, Laura? I think it was at it. There it is. Okay. So looking at this is the receptor point, the Elplaws or Rexford side of the river. Looking across the river, you do have a bank of trees along the edge of the river. And then the couple of apartment buildings, which are constructed now. This building is showing the recreation facility with the mature landscaping, which will be or landscaping that'll be planted on between the building and the senior housing, and then the senior housing building here. An element of scale that's approximately 2,300 feet between the receptor and the new building, nearly a half mile across the river. we don't believe there's going to be any visual impact at that distance, looking over the top of three other existing buildings and through a couple of rows of trees. However, the applicant has agreed to eliminate the white siding from their siding package because the residents on the opposite side of the river felt that the white siding was reflecting a lot of light in their direction. So they've eliminated the white siding from any of the architectural elevations within this building, so that has been done. I think you've seen this rendering before, but this is from Aqueduct Road looking at the building and the roof lines. I think that was requested by the part of the ZBA package for the height variance. They are working through the architectural review board comments. They still have a few things they need to address, and again, everything was kind of held up until we knew what was going on with the ZBA. But they're finalizing the bulk of those comments from that standpoint. And other than that, I'm going to keep it brief because you guys have had a lot to do and talk about tonight. So, and since this is just an update, and we'd be happy to hear anything else you need from us for the next meeting.
You guys, as a project lead.
Just
shall we-
confirm, the mechanicals are going to be on the roof?
The mechanicals are going to be on the roof, and that's going to come with that aerial roof plan that we were stating, because those roof pitches come up and then it drops down into a flat roof behind that.
That's the
So
plan, okay.
it ends up becoming a parapet, which will shield and screen those mechanicals.
Now, the ARV, do you guys have some concerns about that, or is that?
So the concerns were that some of the perspective renderings show pretty deep gables.
Okay.
And the way that the building now comes out, the plan has like a dumbbell and then comes back in.
Right.
And so it was how you were getting all of those roof lines in the perspective so that the angles work and you create a well to get all that in there.
And that's
interested in
exactly what
seeing
they're
it
working
too.
on.
So it's going to be tricky, but I think they can probably do it. It's just how well that roof configuration is going to look with the original rendering that you had. When the building was a rectangle, you could have easily done that. Now you're moving things in and out, which is better. I like the plan.
Much better.
It's just trying to get that to marry up. And I think you're going to have a combination of probably some gabled areas with wells, and then how deep the well is in the main as it gets to the dumbbell ends is what they're working on.
I'm not involved with the architecturals, and I've played architect a few times over my career, and I know exactly what you mean about trying to match up those roof lines when you start getting those angles coming together. So I'm sure the architects have their work cut out for them, and that's why you don't have that plan today, because it's been relatively in recent history that we got the ZBA approval of which direction we we're going in with those roof lines.
What software are they using?
I would imagine they may be using SketchUp, or if they're using a BIM model, which is the glorified AutoCAD. There's other renderings. Photoshop is one. I think it's probably, my guess would be SketchUp, but whatever they have, those drawings actually have to be construction documents to show that well, because on the ends of the buildings where you have some intersecting gables, you got to get a rooftop unit, might be served at a different point on the roof and piped in over, depending on how that well is. So it's a flat roof with a mansard. So it's basically like a glorified kind of McDonald's looking thing.
Yeah.
That has a larger, deep service area in the middle that's trying to hide all of the utilities. The backup plan is that if they can't figure that out, there may be some units that are, if they're not enclosed in the units themselves, would have to be condensers down at the ground level. So, but again, they got to work through that.
I mean, why I asked is that so it's software that's going to mathematically connect all the lines, right?
Mhm.
It's not just make a drawing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, they're going to model this, flip it around and see how it's going to look. And then
Yeah,
we're
well, I
going
mean,
to,
it'll establish uniqueness of points of intersection. Right?
correct. Because if not, it's going to get real expensive in the field.
I know. And I'm sure they do as well. But I know they've got good architects working on it, so I'm sure they'll be able to put that plan together.
So thank you for sitting with us tonight. Any question? Okay.
I just want to be sure that this rooftop construction with the mechanicals is going to include any sound suppressant needed, if it is, baffling or whatever?
I mean, it's an open, I mean, it'd be sound suppressant with, I'm sure there'd be sound dampening with the residents in the building. I think given the location and the mansard roofs from, in the proximity to neighboring residences, you wouldn't have, any issues with sound from that standpoint, but I'm sure they'll be looking at some sort of architectural detail to make sure that the person who's living right under those units isn't,
Well, and even people outside.
people outside, yeah, so.
We've had issues in the past, so I tend to bring that up.
Okay, and
Thank
that's
you.
something I will relay on to them. Yeah.
The only comment I have is, I guess, question of the board, the site section showing across the river.
Yes.
Is everybody okay with that? Are we done? I know this is something that was requested of the applicant. Does that meet the needs of the request?
The request to see what the distance and the object between the 2 points are.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the white siding removal is critical. And, I mean, this is informative to see it, so I agree, right? I think why I brought up the white siding, I think, yeah, it is 2,000 feet, but I think there's, that side of the building will be visible
Yeah.
in between the trees.
I'm sure that you'll be able to see some, but it
Yeah,
is
I
a
mean,
good
I
distance.
just did a straight line from the elevation over there. So it will be seen. It'll really just be tree covering primarily that's going to actually protect it.
Okay, so.
But that's what we wanted to see.
Yeah, it's okay. I wanted to make sure we're all set with that, so.
Okay.
There's no open item there, so. All right, so we'll look forward to, as you get some of the design work done, and you take a look at that and just keep it moving forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time this evening, and hopefully Chuck will be back for the next meeting. I'm sure he presents better than I do.
I did take a ride, I
And
think
you're-
last meeting I did take a ride down there. It's looking pretty good. I mean,
It is
obviously it's
looking
work in
good.
progress, but it does look nice down there.
Really good.
Yeah.
I bike ride there over the weekend.
Mm.
It looks.
They do a really nice job, and I was lucky enough to get invited to their grand opening on Starbuck Island, and I was truly impressed with some of the work they've
Yeah.
done down there even. So,
I have to guess Chuck's probably over at the Half Moon Planning Board meeting would be my guess.
what's that?
He's probably
No,
at the-
actually, it was at Green Island.
Green Island?
Yeah, and
Half
actually,
Moon, there's a big proposal for Half Moon development there.
yeah, I didn't see
For 146, yeah.
Brett, in your email, you mentioned you're gonna add the offsite sidewalk
Yes.
to your drawings too.
that. I didn't. I mentioned that they're going to do. You want me to actually put a drawing together for it, or
Yeah,
okay?
What was that for, Laura?
the offsite sidewalk that was part of the second phase 2. Yeah,
It was part of the resolution.
Yeah.
It had to be, they have to provide the sidewalk from the property to the entrance to
Aqueduct Park.
the Aqueduct Park. So, and they're
Claire
they're
Kane.
on board with doing that. We'll get you a plan for that.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thank you.
Enjoy your evening. Take care,
All
everyone.
right. Okay, I think Laura, there's no more on the discussion items, but there's a couple of things that were included in the packet. The Duncan pylon sign, excuse me.
Yeah, so Clark and I have been looking at this one. Originally, we thought that this could just be administrative approvals because it's an allowable sign in the zoning district. And I think that the highway commercial doesn't have as strict planning board reviews as like neighborhood commercial. But Clark and I did discover a section of code that says that signs aren't allowed between the face of the building and the road in commercial highway, which is strange because most of them are there. So we just have to do a little more digging. If we can approve this one administratively, we will, but it may need a waiver from you or the zoning board. So that's just a heads up.
Yep, so it's a work in progress. You
It's a
you
work
do some
in
research to do there. Yep, okay.
And then the other update is it doesn't change the parking or the, but if you see a construction truck outside of Body Works Professionals on Balltown Road, it's because they're reconfiguring the inside just a bit and they're adding an additional massage room. But our requirements and parking and everything is based on square footage, so they can add walls and stuff inside there. But just so you guys know, if you see somebody out there, they're working away. And then I wasn't able to put this in the packet, But Rivers Ledge is getting ready to build their pool, and on their original plan, they are showing a gazebo. They're switching that to like a four-sided like pool house with some shade. So we're working on a building permit for that too, so that they can actually get their pool in the ground.
Okay. Is there anything else you had under reports, or Mr. Henry, do you have anything for tonight? No, it's a late night.
No, Laura covered everything.
Okay. So what I'm going to do for commission business, anybody have any questions or anything they want to share with the board? Questions for the planning department? And we'll just, it's a late night. I appreciate everything, everybody.
Real fast, I had raised the issue of certain unapproved
We're still working
signs.
on it. Yeah, we're still working.
I noticed another one recently
They're growing.
because the first one's got away with it, so. But one of the businesses is limiting it to 15 minutes for one spot. And this just can't continue. It's not going to be workable.
Yeah, we're aware. There's some issues though. The signs are like inside the glass. They're not necessarily like signs that we can, it's just complicated. We're working on it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Laura or the board? Comments? Okay, again, late night. Have a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Move for adjournment by Mr. Scrivby Tennis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Laflamme. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I know it's a long night. Appreciate it.